Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for January 18th, 2022. Our first order of business, if we could call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brennan. Here. Councilmember Lehman. Here. Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Contreras. Here. Mayor Mars.
Here. Thank you all. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. You. Moving ahead to item number 3, agenda. Any changes, Mr. Reynolds?
No changes, sir.
Councilor Whiting?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. Discussion by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The agenda has been approved. Moving forward to the consent agenda. Any changes, Mr. Reynolds?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I'd like to remove 4D1.
4D1. Others? Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as modified.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the modified consent agenda. Councilor Brennan seconded that. Before we vote, we would read the modified consent agenda into the public record. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. These are consent agenda items for 18 January of 2022. 4A1 approves the city council meeting minutes for 4 January of 2022. 4A2 approves a Sunday liquor license for the Shakopee Ballroom located at 2400 4th Avenue East. 4A3 approves a tobacco license for Springleaf Incorporated, doing business as Tobacco Express 1, with its location at 1148 Veerling Drive East. 4B1 approves the renewal of the city ice rental agreement with the Shakopee Youth Hockey Association. 4C1 adopts resolution number R2022 TAC 009, approving the application to the Metro Conservation Partners Legacy. 42 approves plans and specifications and orders the advertisement for bids for the Lift Station 16 rehab project, which is Sewer TAC 19 TAC 001. 4D3 approves plans and specifications and orders the advertisement for bids for the 2022 Cured in Place Sewer Pipe Lining project, which is Sewer 22 TAC 001. 4D4 approves change order 1 for the Ridge Creek Park and PLOC improvement project, which is PR TAC 2 TAC 001 in the amount of $177,299.28. 4D5 adopts resolution number R2022 TAC 010, approving a grant application to the Minnesota OSHA Safety Grant Program. And 4D6 adopts resolution number R2022 TAC 013, approving an agreement for pass-through funding for de-icing equipment capital purchases.
Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. I have a motion and a second for the modified consent agenda. The modified consent agenda has been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. By all in favor, by voice vote, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Modified consent's been approved. Thank you. Let's move ahead now. I'd like to call any resident citizen that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda tonight. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome on an item not on the agenda. Mr. Reynolds, have we received any electronic communication?
No, sir.
Seeing no resident coming forward here, we would move forward to item number 6, and that would be business removed from consent. We would have one item, 4D1. Councilor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, the reason I took it off isn't necessarily the bidding process for the project. It's more of a policy discussion for how we implement. You know, this body had a pretty lengthy discussion on this with staff about how we go about applying this to properties that have newer systems or let them get their benefit out of them systems. And most of it, I think I can agree with most of it. There's one exception when a property is sold. And, I started thinking about some situations that could happen. And, somebody has a new system in place, maybe it's 2 years old, and, their business requires them to move out of state or something, and they sell that property. Once the property is sold, by how I read this, the next property owner or that property owner before they sell, somebody's got to immediately hook up and have these costs, even though the system is relatively new. So using that example, the property owner that put the new system in made the $30,000 investment or whatever it was, didn't get to appreciate that investment, and it's actually going to harm their sale, because anybody that's going to buy that property is going to see that there's going to be an immediate, whatever the cost, $14,000 and $5,000, $22,000 plus assessment on a property, so that's going to probably lower the value of the sale property. So I've got a concern with that, because it doesn't seem to benefit either the seller or the buyer, since there's already a new system on site. Now, granted, this is only going to apply to very few properties, but it still comes off to me as not very fair, and I don't see the benefit from the purchaser of replacing a perfectly good new system until a time when the system itself in disrepair or needs to be replaced. Or I think this also says a 15-year maximum timeline, which would be 50% of the life cycle of a new system if it was built today. So that's my only concern that I have, and I don't think it's too hard to work around. Kind of wanted to get council's perspective on it. I just don't see, I'm not going to be able to support that portion of it. It just doesn't benefit either the buyer or the seller, and it actually hurts, so.
Okay, Counselor Whiting?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and the new system kind of thing, but we really need to work some trigger events into these things. And I remember the sale of a home has been one of the trigger events for this type of upgrade for years and years and years. I know back in the 70s when we sold our house, we had to finally hook up to water, and it had been there for years. Wasn't in Shakopee, but I just think there has to be some events. I don't see that as happening that often, especially now that these folks know that the systems are going to be upgraded. I don't think anybody's going to be putting in a new system too quick here. So I don't see the need to change it.
Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, maybe you missed my point. My point is there's systems there currently that are relatively new, if not brand new. So these folks could sell their house next year for whatever reason. And they're now in a position where they don't get to benefit from their investment that they made in the system, which they were legally allowed to make. As a matter of fact, they were required to make at that time, because the new system is a much better system than what they had. So now they got the new mound system, latest, greatest thing. It's 2 years old. They're forced to move for whatever reason, and they don't get the benefit out of that system. And the new people that are purchasing it don't get to use it. They have to automatically hook up. So that's my concern. My concern is nobody is benefiting from that. So since it's such few and far in between, I would guess there's probably 4 or 5 systems, possibly 6, that would fall into that category that we allow them to get some kind of a life cycle out of it. If it's up to that 15 years that's listed in here, that would be a reasonable, I guess, because after 15 years it's going to be outdated, it's half its life cycle is gone, and you can make the argument that they did get some benefit use out of their investment. Because realistically and legally, they could make the argument that they're gaining no benefit off of hooking up.
Mr.
And-
Reynolds?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Mr. Lillienhog and I earlier today had discussed Councilor Lehman's concerns. We certainly can do what he's suggesting. Our only concern is that, and I guess it's much to your point, Councilor Whiting, is that, we still have some areas in town where we were supposed to have people hooked up, and we still don't have them hooked up because it's a difficult thing to do for them, because it is an incredible investment. So, we can incorporate anything that council wants to, and we already have some of the things based upon the discussions that we've had previously on the issue, and we certainly can do that. The more we do that, though, we're going to have less and less compliance, I think, down the road. And so it is that balance. It's never going to be an easy decision one way or the other for someone who has to put $20,000 or $30,000 into it.
Steve?
And Mayor and council members, good evening. And not to reiterate anything that's already been said, but I would like to make a couple of points that the council does not have to make a decision on this tonight. This will be a policy fee decision that we will archive in the future at the end of the project when we actually establish the fee based on actual project costs. We did give this memorandum to you outlining the different funding and connection scenarios. So if it's the flavor of the council, we can easily bring this back to you at that time to make it part of the policy decision and the fee computation and exemptions. And to Councilmember Lehman's point, we don't have a full inventory of all of the wells and septic systems out there. We're trying to build it. We have there's about 40 unique properties out there, and most of them have both a well and septic. We have a good inventory of 18 of those properties, and matching pretty much what Councilmember Lehman is indicating. Most of the septics are over 21 years old. There's only a few that are between 6 to 10 years old, and there could be newers, we just don't know about it, but the county will have good documentation on that. And on the well side, again, most of them are older. There are 3 of them that are less than 5 years old. I would say with the well that we don't make them, on the city's end, we don't make them abandon the well, but if we did make them connect, they could continue to use that well separate from the connection point. They could use it for irrigation and or other purposes. So there's a balance there, and whatever the flavor of the council is, we can easily track that and work with it. So there's no pinch point or issue point on the staff end of it or the technical end of it. So we can make that work if we need to. Thank you.
Councilor Brennan?
Yeah, when I read this, we're looking at the plan, improving the plan, and approving the advertising for bids. So I think that's a separate issue than what Councilmember Lehman is referring to. And, I think that I agree that that's something that we can discuss in the future.
Okay, so the action before us is not the policy, it's the advertisement and ordering of bids here for the project, and staff would come back. So, Councilor Lehman?
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with finding out what the true dollar amount's gonna be by getting bids. I mean, we're not bound to the project at that point. We have to approve the bids, but the memorandum that we did get did talk about these things, and it's always better to be ahead of that discussion and let you know what I'm thinking, and I did email it to the administrator to share. So I would just hate to see somebody that has a very new system have to sell for whatever reasons, and a potential buyer saying, geez, I gotta pay 22 grand in assessments on this property. That's gonna lower the sale value of that property. So, and I think that there's workarounds here, so.
Okay, Mr. Reynolds?
And this is germane, since we're talking about advertisement for bids, I do want to throw this in here. About a year ago, maybe a little longer, I discussed about the wildly not secure bidding future that we had before us. Mr. Lillialig and I talked about it at some depth today. We continue to have concerns about what all of our bids for the next several months are going to come back as. And, you know, as part of that, I want to remind you, if we have something that is way out of whack, you know, we're basically going to say, let's wait. So just to remind everyone that we are in incredibly uncertain times when it comes to bidding. Mr. Tobin was looking at some construction prices earlier today, and just the, you know, the price and the availability of steel beams in and of itself is just unreal. So just wanted to throw that out there as a reminder to everyone.
Councilor Brennan.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number R 2022-011, approving plans and specifications and ordering advertisement for bids for the Mary Street and Hanson Avenue and 13th Avenue Utility Extension Project, Sewer 21-001.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Contreras. My discussion on this is, I think this is a project in our east end that is long overdue. Not even a lot of people know of this area, and it's a mixture of industrial and homes, and, you know, we have some groundwater contamination there. It's time to come into the 2022, and I applaud this project as we step forward, step by step. And I think in the overall area will benefit from this. The city will benefit from it. I think the landowners in the end will benefit from it. So I'm concerned that it's going to become a tracking issue of who hooks up when and when's the clock start and all those things. But we can come to those policies more when we see some bids and tighten up the policies. So, Councilor Whiting.
I think the first year I was here, we put that 5-year clock again going, and I don't think we've had resolution on that, and that's been quite a while too. So there's several out there, and that is a slippery slope, so I'm concerned with that.
Motion on the table, second, further discussion?
I just wanted to comment that I know that there was a lot of work done with the SPU, and there was a lot of collaboration and agreement between the two organizations. So I know that I really appreciate that work.
Mayor, if I may,
Councilor Lehman.
I'll just make a last closing comment. Back, Councilor Whiting, to your comment, I remember that. The systems were a lot different back then. The newer systems now, the mounds are much better. And I think there's better tracking by the county today than there was 10, 20 years ago. So we know that when a sewer, well, we know, I don't know if the county knows, but when the sewer is available and they have a septic system and it's pumped out, the pumping process now, when it's serviced, it's inspected, and that report now goes to the county. And if there's a flagged issue with the system, the collaboration needs to be between the ISS, county ISS, and the city, saying, now is the time that you are going to be required. You're not allowed to build a new system. Now is the time that you must connect. It's there. So I think we're better positioned now than we have been in the past.
Right. Okay. More to come, but motion on the table in a second to at least put this out to bids with further policy discussion at a later date. Further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you all very much. All right. Let's move ahead to a public hearing at 7A, the 2022 full depth pavement reconstruction project. Councilor Brennan.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes. The public hearing is now open, and Ryan will present. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the Improvement public hearing for the 2022 Full Depth Pavement Reconstruction Project, CIF 22-001. Tonight, we're asking you to hold an actual public hearing for this project and with the recommendation to order the project in preparation of plans and specifications. This project is in our capital improvement project or program, and it is a city-initiated program that we do to reconstruct our aging streets. This process and public hearing for city roadway improvements are being conducted in accordance with State of Minnesota Statute 429. There was an amended feasibility report included with the agenda tonight. Proper notices have been mailed and advertised. The project location is Gorman Street, right here in front of City Hall from 4th Avenue to Marshall Road, as well as Weston Court from 17th Avenue to the cul-de-sac, and Greenwood Court from 17th Avenue to Weston Court. Gorman Street in its existing condition is typically 36 feet wide. There's a short section of turn lane at Marshall Road that widens it out to 43 feet. It's a bituminous asphalt roadway, relatively flat with concrete curb and gutter and storm sewer that ultimately drains to the river. There's a 5-foot sidewalk, concrete sidewalk on the south and west side of Gorman Street, as well as an 8-foot wide bituminous trail on the north and east side of Gorman Street. It does have a 12-inch diameter ductile iron water main pipe, as well as 8-inch sanitary sewer, PVC, in the southern boulevard. The light poles right now are wood light poles with a Cobra head type fixture and LED lights. This was constructed in 2000, but the asphalt surface has deteriorated significantly. Proposed improvements for Gorman Street include a full depth reclamation of the roadway. So we'll grind up that existing pavement and aggregate and use that as our aggregate base and pave a new 5-inch asphalt bituminous surface. We'll go through and we'll upgrade any of the pedestrian ramps that are in the site to meet ADA standards, as well as do some spot repair on the concrete. So most of the curb and gutter driveway aprons will stay. Anything that's cracked, significantly heaved, or causes other issues, we'll do some spot repairs of that. We're also proposing to reclaim the existing trail that's on the north and east side of Gorman Street. Similarly, you reuse that aggregate and pave a new surface. And then we're also proposing to upgrade the existing wood light poles to aluminum poles with those LED lights. No sanitary sewer, storm sewer, or water main improvements are proposed for this project area. Then on to Westwood Court and Greenwood Court. Both of these roads are 36-foot wide. On I think it's Weston Court, it does widen out to 46 feet wide as it gets up to 17th Avenue. Generally a flat roadway, again, concrete curb and gutter and storm sewer system in this area, drains to the MnDOT linear drainage ponds and then ultimately to the Minnesota River. Right now there's a 5-foot concrete sidewalk on the east side of Weston Court, which ends just north of Greenwood Court and does not run all the way north and south to that cul-de-sac. There's an 8-inch diameter ductile iron water main under the roadway, as well as an 8-inch diameter PVC sanitary sewer main under that roadway. This currently has aluminum light poles with the Cobra head type fixture and LED lights. This was also constructed in 2000. From the pictures here, you can see the bituminous asphalt roadway has deteriorated pretty significantly. So proposed improvements for Weston Court and Greenwood Court. Similarly, we're proposing a full depth reclamation of the surface of the roadway. We'll reutilize that aggregate base and pave 5 new inches of bituminous asphalt to get up to current standards. We'll upgrade the curb ramps to meet ADA. The couple ped ramps up at 17th Avenue have already been done with the county project a few years back. So it'd be those couple at Greenwood Court. We're also going to do spot sidewalk and curb and gutter repair. And then from this picture here, you can see we're proposing to extend new concrete sidewalk along Weston Court. So that first property north of Greenwood Court, it kind of ends about half mid-block there. So we'd extend it the rest of the way up, as well as construct new sidewalk on Greenwood Court on the east and north side. This is proposed as part of our design criteria. All new roadways, especially commercial, require sidewalk on one and sometimes both sides of the roadway. So that's something in this area with the commercial properties that we're recommending the sidewalk be installed to serve pedestrian traffic to this area. Additionally, we're looking at installing 2 new streetlights per the streetlight policy out on 17th Avenue, one at Greenwood Court and 17th. The second one will actually be included with our mill and overlay project, which runs to the south there. Weston Court, for about a block south of here, was originally included in this full depth reclamation project. We've moved it to the mill and overlay project, and we'll do some heavy patching and repairs with that roadway, but to keep it on the same pavement cycle as the rest of those. No major sanitary sewer, storm sewer, or water main improvements are proposed for this project area. In final design, I think we identified 1 or 2 pipe sections of concrete pipe that may need some repair, crack, or a little hole in it, so we may do a little bit of miscellaneous repair, but nothing significant. Projects like this come with their inconveniences for the adjacent property owners. This is right out our front door, so we'll all be able to look at it all day and every day. Big trucks, our own Public Works trucks. The other site is a commercial area with a car dealership and some gas stations and a daycare. So very busy areas. So there will be the nuisance of working under traffic, if you will. Dust, dirt, vibration, short-term delays, things like that can be expected. This project, we will spec fairly tightly. We'll give them the bulk of the summer to start or figure out when they want to do the work, but once they start it, we anticipate putting about a 1-month period where they have to, as soon as they start digging, you got to keep working and get this thing done so that we can get in, out, and out of these areas in a timely fashion and minimize disruption to the businesses. Access will be provided throughout the project. Most of these businesses or facilities have multiple entrances or exits, and with this type of work, there's just short-term delays. Maybe it's the 15 minutes that the paver is going by that takes some time to roll that asphalt and get density before traffic can get on it. Restoration, anything we touch, we try to make it look better than when we were there before. So the ends of the driveways that are disturbed, we're gonna replace those with similar materials. All the disturbed boulevard areas where we did the sidewalk, the reclamation of the trail, those will all be sodded, topsoil, compost blend, and we'll restore everything back to new. Let's get into the nitty gritty. The project costs, we're estimating right now at about $1,074,300. The funding sources for this project, as a 429 project, there are special assessments that total about $244,000. About $790,000 is proposed to come from the Capital Improvement Fund, $23,000 from the Storm Sewer Fund, $12,000 approximately from the Sanitary Sewer Fund, and about $6,000 proposed to be paid by Shakopee Public Utilities. The special assessments, as per the City of Shakopee assessment policy, 30% of the assessable street improvements will be used to determine the assessable street improvements. All lots in the project area are proposed to be paid, to be assessed on an area basis. I'll get to a map here in just a minute for you. There are 2 city-owned lots on Gorman Street, this one here and the one at Public Works, that will not be assessed. However, the portion, that area of street that is in front of those will not be assessed and will be paid out of the Capital Improvement Fund. So the other assessable lots will not be paying for the city portion. There's 1 corner lot on the project, and that will be, a corner lot adjustment will be made for 1100 4th Avenue. The bituminous trail on the east side of Gorman will not be assessed, and the 5-foot concrete sidewalk on Greenwood Court and Westwood Court will be 100% accessible per our policy. You can see here at the bottom there's a couple tables with those assessment amounts as well as an assessment per acre, about $5,500 per accessible acre on Gorman Street and about $7,038 per acre on Weston Court and Greenwood Court. Largely the difference there is that sidewalk that's assessed and installed on this project.
And if that's brand new, that's assessed at 100%?
Any development property that does not have sidewalk, the assessment policy calls out that 100% of the cost of the new sidewalk shall be assessed to the benefiting properties.
Rather than an existing sidewalk that is broken up that we would fix would be at 30%, right?
Mayor and council, that is correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
In front of you now is the assessment map with the 2 areas. The one on the left is Gorman Street there. You'll see the 2 large city lots in yellow. Those are not proposed to be assessed, and again, that equivalent amount of street is not to be assessed. It'll be against the capital improvement fund. There is that one lot on 4th Avenue at 1100 4th that is getting a corner lot assessment, so they'll pay half of their assessment on Gorman Street and half of it on 4th Avenue. All the other properties are being assessed on an area basis. There's approximately 7 properties on Gorman Street, and again, there's about 7 more properties on Weston and Greenwood Court. We are including these projects together, but with that said, these will be quantities, and the designs of each of these will be calculated independently, and we'll calculate the assessments for Gorman Street with what improvements Gorman Street is getting. Whatever Weston and Greenwood Court, they'll pay for those assessments and those improvements on their side of it. Little amortization schedule for you, just to show if you had about a $12,600 assessment, we are anticipating approximately 4.5% interest rate. That is not to be determined tonight. We will have an assessment hearing in the fall after the completion of the project. But this is what that would look like. So there's initial principal, is $12,600. You'd have about $118 of interest if you paid it off over 10 years. And a preliminary project schedule for you here. A couple weeks ago, you would have received the feasibility report. We're holding that public hearing here tonight. In a couple weeks, we'll come back to you and ask you to approve our plans and specifications and authorize ad for bid. We hope to open those bids on March 1st, and then shortly thereafter, March 15th, bring those back to you to ask City Council to consider the award of the contract. Project can start anytime from May, wrapping up sometime in September, and then come October and November, we'll bring back to you the cost to be assessed and call for a public hearing and hold that final assessment public hearing. With that, I stand for any questions.
Excellent, great report. Ryan, questions of staff? Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I got a few questions, if I can just shoot them all out. First, if you can go to the assessment map. The PID 279060420, did I read that right?
Yes.
That's pretty good for new glasses, huh? That doesn't front Gorman Street, neither does the one right below it, but I'm assuming they're all part of one larger parcel, is that the case?
Mayor and Council, that is correct. There's a couple of apartment buildings. It's all jointly owned as one kind of lot. Similarly with the 2 larger, if you will, zigzag properties just to the east of that.
Right.
279060210 and the adjoining property.
Right, 210 butts Gorman, so I didn't have no question about that, but I knew the other one was part of that one, so I didn't ask about that. Next question, Mayor?
Yes?
The new sidewalk proposed, is that an existing right-of-way, or will right-of-way need to be acquired?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, good question. So a significant portion of that is in City of Shakopee right-of-way. There is a small portion that is actually on the Scott County property as it ties into, or excuse me, it's owned by the state of Minnesota, but run by Scott County with the MVTA site. We have talked to their staff there, and they have been generally receptive and good with granting us an easement for that. If they do not, our contingency would be to end the sidewalk in the public right-of-way at their driveway entrance if something doesn't happen or that becomes a complication.
Okay, and then two more. We had a problem with sod being available in past projects last year. Are we anticipating that and doing the hydro seeding as a backup plan, or is the sod issue resolved?
Mayor and Council, these sod, seed, things kind of go in cycles like that, where if construction wanes, sod farmers take those crops and plant it as something else. As demand ramps up, they bring those back in. Right now, we haven't heard of any kind of sod issues. We anticipate using sod here. If it becomes an issue, we can certainly change it out to a hydro seed and mulch mixture. A great product, actually as good or better than sod if people are patient and let it grow.
All right, and my last question is probably the hardest one, Mayor. So these roads are all 22 years old roughly, heavily used. what are the new standards compared to the standard in 2020 when these were built? And what can we anticipate for a new life cycle expectancy on the new product?
Yeah, great council, mayor and city council. 2000 was the construction year on these. We have soil borings that do show that there's decent material generally underneath of these roadways. So it looks like we're having premature failure on the bituminous asphalt in these specific roadways. Gorman Street was built to 4 inches. Our current standard is a 5-inch. Other differences is we use different oils back in 2000 that we use today. So they would have used a lesser grade oil that doesn't perform as well in this ultra cold and the ultra hot temperatures that we see. And we've upgraded that specification as well. So we're hoping, I mean, by pavement design standards, the reclaimed material that we're going to grind down into this will have an appropriate granular base section, and then this newer asphalt at a thicker section. Greenwood Court, part of the commercial section, only had 3 inches of asphalt on it. Should have been 5 by today's standards. That's a significant difference. Weston Court, I think, was 4 inches, 3.5 in some areas from the boring logs. So again, thicker pavement sections, better oil. Hopefully these should hold up. Additionally, I would say that we've also implemented a pavement management system at this time. So we are looking at actively tracking to make sure that proper crack repair, patching, rehab, seal coats, that they're done in a timely fashion to make sure that we really protect the investment that we put into our roadways to squeeze out every ounce that we can get out of these roads.
What should we expect for life expectancy?
On typical roadways, we're hoping to get, I would say, 20 years initially out of a brand new road prior to any major maintenance. So we would do a few years in, crack repair, and then we're going to do a chip seal coat immediately following. That should hold up for until we get it out to about 10 years, at which time we'll continue to do crack repairs. Can't stress that enough. All that crack repair keeps the water from the subgrade and keeps these pavements from failing. And then sometimes a second chip seal coat is warranted, or we've introduced kind of a new project type, which is a rehab. It's less than a mill and overlay or a recon, but more than just a typical seal coat. The idea is to go in there, fix all those cracks, any of the bigger, heavier cracks that have failed, maybe some patching around the manholes, and then do another chip seal coat to push some of those roads out to 20, 25 years. Now, it works great in the residential areas. The commercial areas, you do see heavier volumes of traffic, heavier types of vehicles, so you're not going to get quite as many years out of those. But if we can get 20, then we do a mill and overlay, rinse and repeat, keep doing the same things. Hopefully you can get a solid 30, even 40 years out of a roadway before we have to reconstruct it.
Thank you.
I think also the use of these roads has changed. I think if these were both developed in 2020, I don't think the transit station was there at that time. So, you know, you look at all that bus traffic, maybe, you know, during COVID, it's not as much obviously, but, you know, that transit station was in a big user there of the roadway. Also, gas station and car lots Weston is a busy area there around Greenwood at all times of the day.
That transit station was a dealership. It was a Dodge.
Well, there were cars and a dealership where you come in and buy a car. It wasn't.
The trucks delivered them cars.
Okay, well, that's fine. I just, you know, I get that. And also I think even for, you know, across the street here on Gorman with the Public Works, I know that, you know, we buy plow trucks every year, and you know, but I think these are good projects from what I can see, especially the Weston and the Greenwood. I travel that a little bit. Other questions of staff, Counselor?
You answered all the questions that I had during your presentation, but we are delaying Stagecoach, and that was, I believe, was delayed from also last year. So is there any feeling on when that will be coming up? Is it just pushed out a year? Or?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, so a couple things came up with Stagecoach. So one is this last year, a massive redevelopment of the Cretex site by Henches, and the roundabout was part of the reason we delayed what we were going to do with Stagecoach. As we started getting into design, there's quite a bit of actual work that we have to do with the UPRR, the railroad, as well as MnDOT, as we'll be modifying that bridge that goes over part of 169 as well. So it gives us a little bit of additional time there. The other is that Maris and Hanson had also actually gotten delayed a year as well. And so with the Maris Hanson project being under full reconstruction, 13th Avenue is one of those that kind of connects that area into Savage. And we kind of thought that we'd be overwhelming that area as well if we try to reconstruct all of Stagecoach plus all of Maris and Hanson all at the same time. So the idea there, give us a little bit more coordination time as well as kind of offset some of the pain for some of those people in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? If not, Ryan, thank you. This is a public hearing. Would any resident like to come forward and make comment on this proposed full depth pavement reconstruction project for 2022? Seeing none. Councilor Contreras?
Make a motion to close our public hearing.
A second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Brennan. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Public hearing is now closed. Councilor Brennan?
Oh, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number R 2022-012, ordering improvements and preparations of plans and specifications for the 2022 full depth pavement reconstruction project CIF 22-001.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Lehman. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you all very much. Let's move ahead then to 8A1, our monthly financial review, and Nate will present. Welcome.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Nate Reinhardt, Finance Director for the city. Tonight I'll be presenting our financial results through December. These are preliminary results. We will be posting journal entries and payables and receivables over the next few weeks, so these numbers will change.
Yes.
This slide shows the general fund through December. Our preliminary results show we ended positive for the year. If you look at the bottom line, it shows a net positive amount of $3.48 million in the 2021 year-to-date to actual column. I'll elaborate further on what this means on the next slide, but wanted to touch on some of the information on this slide first. Beginning with revenues, in total we're at 108% of the amended budget, or about $2.48 million above. For taxes, which is primary property taxes, we have one additional final settlement that we'll have in January, but we're at 99% of our budget. Licenses and permit revenues, we're at 177% as a result of the strong year in building permit revenues. Intergovernmental, that includes the fiscal recovery funds, we're at 117% of amended budget. And then miscellaneous, currently showing at 91%. However, this will end up being a negative amount following the allocation of the market value adjustments for investments, which was unrealized loss for the year. As you recall at our last meeting, in December, we brought forward amendments with the intention that all the departments would come in under the amended budget at the end of the year. However, you can see that didn't exactly quite work that way. We have 4 departments that were slightly over, which are facilities, fire inspection, and park maintenance. However, those overages are anticipated to have only a minor impact on the overall financial results. For expenditures in total, we're at 97%, or about $875,000 below budget. The previous slide showed the general fund currently at $3.48 million ahead for 2021. As mentioned, we haven't had a chance to dive into the numbers completely, so there will be adjustments, but I can give you a best guess on where we'll end up based on the numbers, where the numbers are currently at, but they'll likely swing probably several $100,000 before we have final audited numbers. In addition to booking payables and receivables, there are a few known significant adjustments. The first one would be for unspent coronavirus fiscal recovery funds of about $1 million. This money will be separated from the money that we'd be able to spend on operations in 2022, or budgeted operations in 2022. Number two, the allocation of unrealized investment loss to the general fund. And the third one, as our fund balance policy requires that the city set aside 35% to 50% of general fund operating expenditures. Based on the 2022 budget, if we were to be at 50%, it would require about a $1.2 million increase. It's been the city's past practice to put excess general funds towards one-time expenditures, specifically unfunded capital needs. So we'll be circling back probably in March or April with final audited numbers or close to audited numbers and determining if there was an appropriate use for any excess funds that we might have. Here's the recreational facilities budget to actual. Sand Venture, net results are within 1% of the previous year and also within 1% of the budget expectations for the full year. The ice arena net results were ahead of last year, but slightly below the budget expectations for the year. And then the community center, again, net results were ahead of last year, but below budget expectations for the full year. A couple of slides on investments. Total investment, as I've mentioned in previous presentations, made up of two things, which is your interest earnings and your adjustment for market value. The purple line on this slide shows the investment income through the end of the year. With a low interest rate environment, you can see we're currently tracking below what we've done the previous 4 years. We're looking at about half the interest earnings in comparison to last year, $722,000 versus about $1.4 million. This number again will be adjusted slight with accrued interest, but overall, if you were to look at investment return, we're at about 1.08% compared to about 2.32 in the previous year. And then the purple line on this slide shows the market value adjustment for investments for the year. As rates declined in the last couple of years, we had large unrealized gains for the previous 2 years, which were the red and green lines for 2020 and 2019, where rates are slightly up, which has had the reverse impact this year. The adjustment is considered on paper. We do intend to hold all investments until maturity, but we're looking at a market value adjustment as of 12/31 of almost $1.3 million. When you combine both the interest earnings and the unrealized adjustment, we're at a net investment loss in 2021 of about $562,000. So not great news, but overall, if you look at the financial results of the general fund, we're definitely ahead for the year.
Questions? Questions? Okay. Proceed. Yeah, is that it? Okay. Other questions for the review? I guess we'll probably see these numbers tighten up a little bit as further adjustments are made over the next probably 60 days. I think moving some and shoring up improving our balance reserve, balance reserve, I think is prudent. As the city grows, we've always had a pretty healthy reserve, but I want to make sure that we keep a healthy reserve for difficult times. So that's kind of how I look at that, Councilor Lehman.
I have a question. When we hear the Fed on the news talking about interest rate increases, what does that mean for us?
So obviously I don't have a crystal ball, but the anticipation is that the rates will be going up over the next year. They're looking at rate increases. Specifically what I've seen out there is short-term rates are seeing probably the biggest impact over the next year. So where we're holding a lot of short-term investments, in the long run it'll be beneficial to our investments. Now we've got a lot of investments laddered out, so as things mature, we're extending it out, so it takes time to, catch up to where the rates are. But I think where the most immediate impact on us would probably be the short-term rates, where, are just our banking rates and our, less than a 6 months type rates. Yeah, the other impact you'll see, same as this year, where your interest rates are going up. That means the value of what you're holding at the current interest rates will go down. So you'll likely to see an unrealized loss for next year as well, beyond really any control that I have.
I think if the interest rates start rising the way they're going to talk, obviously, and try to shorten some things so we can always capture the upgrade. We've had some pretty low interest rate environment for a long time. That's why we're seeing our investments do well. The book to market there, you know, anticipating that some of our investments that we have will no longer look as good in an upward environment. But again, those are unrealized numbers that were shown. So, you know, there's certainly an opportunity to interest rates rise to go short and then try to build that ladder up as the interest rates increase to capture those dollars. Other questions? Other questions? If not, thank you very much, Nate, for your review. Mr. Reynolds.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to request that we move the Scott County presentation until the following presentation, because I have just realized I have not set up the PowerPoint for them. So the administrator has failed, and if you'll give me a pass, we'll get that fixed for the next one on the agenda. If you can go ahead and go to item 8B1, I would appreciate it, and I
Okay.
will
We'll move ahead then to 8B1, which is the e-training, Twin City Orthopedics Partnership Proposal. And Jay will present. Welcome. And thanks, Scott County, for being flexible.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am excited tonight. We have enjoyed a relationship with E-Train for the last 5 years since we opened the ice arena. They were one of the first partners that we had with the new facility. In fact, in order to put some of the equipment that he has in there, it was hoisted in there before the building was even complete. So they were a ground force in helping us get that going. And we've had a successful relationship with them for 5 years. Their lease is coming up in July, and so in October we sat down with them and the other stakeholders that currently use it, discussing the level of services that were happening and some of the other things, and we learned two things. One, there's more potential that's unrealized in there, and two, the folks that we were serving had some other things that they'd like to see. And so when we talked with Mr. Scott about that, he had this great partner that he's been partnering with for many years in other spaces where he serves. And so he came forward with an idea, and we sat down with the idea, could this work? So E-Train will still be part of the future, but Training House is the proposed partner to take the lead. So Mr. Scott is here to talk about what's happened if you'd like to, but Mr. Rasmussen is talking about what's going to happen next with Training House as a partner. So if you have any questions for Mr. Scott first, he's here with us with E-Train.
Okay. Questions? Councilor Lehman.
Can I get an overview of what's currently being offered and what we're proposing to offer and what the changes are?
So I'll let Mr. Scott talk about what has been offered, and then that's exactly what Mr. Rasmussen is going to talk about, what's going to be offered. So come up to the microphone, please, sir.
Please come up, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Eric Scott, current owner of E-Train. For the last 5 years, we've worked with kids on agility, speed, quickness, balance, whatever those kids need to get to the next level, whether it be trying to make a high school team, some of the high school kids maybe going off to college. But it's been 90% hockey oriented. And as Jay was discussing earlier, when we had our meeting, one of the things that was proposed is could we possibly work with all of the sports in the high school. And although I can do that, I'm mainly a hockey guy, and I've been partnered with TCO at some of our other facilities to do pretty much what we're talking here is expand what we're doing from just hockey to all of the sports. And in my personal opinion, they're the best of the best. So I'm super fortunate to be able to partner with them and have them on board with us. So does that answer your question?
So you have a kid in baseball, Little League ball. Is this where a parent wants them to get an additional level of training?
Yes.
They would go to this?
If that kid, we do work with the hockey for sure. I've worked with stick handling, shooting, skill-specific items, but our overview is the base. Because you need to be faster in every sport, you need to have better agility in every sport, balance. So we do all types of, a lot of my hockey players have received benefit working with me for hockey in their lacrosse or their basketball. So it's more of a base versus a skill level, but we do have some trainers that can work in the skill side as well.
I'm just trying to understand. Let's say a family enters Johnny in little peewee hockey or something,
Okay,
and Johnny's just there to have a good time.
right,
He doesn't want to be an NFL player.
right.
He's just having fun.
Yep. We have teams that come into us, and we do just that. We work on some real basic skills, some ladder stuff. The kids come in there and they run some drills where they have fun.
I guess I'm not understanding. Okay, if you sign up for just a basic park and rec Little League ball,
Right,
you know, you've got volunteer coaches and whatnot, and they go out on their schedule and they have their fun and go out for ice cream afterward or whatever.
absolutely.
That's one thing, and here's the cost that's in our recreational brochure that we send out. How does this tie into that normal experience?
It doesn't have to
Okay.
at all.
It's
If that kid says, hey, I really like rec, Mom and Dad, and I want to play at a higher level, then they say, we have a program right here in Shakopee that will help you achieve that next level.
And then there's a cost for that.
Correct.
Okay.
They also have partnerships with several of our other partners. So for example, the Shakopee Youth Hockey Association has a contract. So if you are a youth hockey player in Shakopee currently, you will do some of your training with E-Train in order to try and enhance some of your skills. Whether that's, they've got unique skating treadmill if you've been up there in order to work on stride. Similarly, the AAA teams that we have also contract with E-Train to do some of the performance training that their staff either don't have the expertise or the time to do. Because, for example, the Youth Hockey Association is primarily volunteers. Now, what we're transitioning, as Eric said, is this has been focused on hockey skills and some figure skating. They've also partnered with the Shakopee Skate School. And so quite a few of our skate school students are also doing performance training. This is going to expand that to serve even a larger scope of people in the community. So what we've had has been successful, and what we recognized is there's some unrealized potential in order to expand the scope of services to serve more, and even some of the existing customers that serve in other sports. So the performance training that you want to do as a hockey player is different than the performance training you want to do as a lacrosse player. Mr. Scott is a specialist with hockey. Training House opens up the aperture for us to be able to serve the broader community and all of the different sports in the community. And Mr. Rasmussen's going to talk about those partnerships that he's beginning to start to build above and beyond the skating community.
Mayor,
Yeah, more questions. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that there's two options available to families that are involved in the sports so that they're not priced out, so to speak.
This is all optional, but like you
Right.
said, if you were in football, you'd have to pay extra to do E-training. It's more hockey-based today. They do want to broaden it.
Unless the sport that you sign up for
Right.
already has a
Has a
contract
contract.
and has that
Yes.
as part of their normal operations.
So it might be a both end. So in some cases, associations have partnerships, and some of those students that he's seeing with youth hockey are coming back for additional training because they want to take it to the next level.
Right.
Okay. Other questions of the E-training before we transition here? Well, you've been a great asset to our community. I'm glad that the horizon is opening up here, from what I can understand.
Absolutely.
With
Thank you.
TCO, I think it's exciting for E-training and exciting for a new partner if they come into the city. Councilor Lehman or Whiting?
Just a question on the aspect of the training house, physical therapist on site. Is it?
I'll turn it over
Actually, that's going to
Eric
be Mr.
Rasmussen. He's
Rasmussen.
going to get into that right now.
Mr. Scott's focused on what we've been doing. Mr. Rasmussen's going to talk about the proposal,
forward.
what's going to.
A little technical difficulty here for the So we actually use Digideck, which is a PowerPoint type system. And just like, we've never had I've never had a problem with it pulling up, but for whatever reason tonight seems to be the night. So I'm happy to share and I don't know if you've shared the Digideck with them prior to the meeting.
I hadn't, I was going to wait till afterwards.
So we'll certainly share that with you guys. And my information's on that Digideck, but it runs through basically a video of the current training house. And I'm happy to introduce myself again. I'm Eric Rasmussen. So I am the director of the Training House and Outreach Services. Training House, is anybody familiar with the Training House at this point? Obviously, a few of you guys are. The Training House came together in combination with Twin Sea Orthopedics and the Minnesota Vikings. So our flagship location is located in Eagan. And I wish our video would work, because it basically is a great big overview of the Viking campus and kind of how we kind of fit into that. In the partnership that TCO formed with the Vikings, the topic of what can we offer for the community of Eagan that would be similar to what the Vikings are getting. So the other thing too, the Vikings had a handful of individuals that their athletes would go out into the community to see, and their goal was to bring them into our campus, and some of those individuals work in our facility, and it just makes it an easier transition for
got it.
those athletes.
Different.
So this is actually our campus, this is our facility. So this is kind of our flagship facility.
I'm going to bring it back here just a second and try and get the volume up. Sorry.
And if the music, it's basically a background music. This kind of gives you guys the idea. So the Training House is a multi-purpose facility that's basically geared towards the high school, collegiate, professional, and citizen athlete. And what we've found since opening our doors 3.5 years ago is we're only as big as the 4 walls that are there. And we've expanded tremendously throughout the metro, and we're even having conversations of beyond metro and potentially even outstate and out of state long-term with the Training House piece. So again, to kind of give you a bit of a background on the Training House, we have the acupuncturist that works with the team. We've got the chiropractors, actually our chiropractor that works with the team. The team works with 2 dietitians that are based out of our facility. We've got a Pilates instructor that works out of our facility that works with the team. But in addition to that, we've got massage therapy. We've partnered with the Premier Sports Psychology, because obviously the mental health of these athletes, and really, quite honestly, young individuals in general seems to be a major concern right now. We've got a large biomechanics lab that and to be quite honest with you, see a lot of individuals from this area making their way to us for some testing post-injury. We've got athletic trainers. We actually have USA Curling in our facility, and train that group, and a handful of performance coaches and physical therapists. So the idea is to bring so much more than just sports performance to the community. As we continue to kind of move out from the center of the city out, obviously Shakopee's an area that we've had a number of individuals that have sought our services, and when Eric approached us to partner with him here in Shakopee, I think we see a much bigger picture of more than just kind of the sports performance. And so as Jay's kind of just flipping through this, kind of gives you an idea of who we are and what we do. But the concept is, I think the concern was, cost, making sure that we're not pricing out the youth and the families from having access to something like this. I think our costs are going to be very similar, if not lower, than what you guys have become accustomed to with E-Train. The one thing that I've been with Twin Sea Orthopedics now for 4 years. My background is in athletics. I was the director of sports medicine at the University of Denver for 10 years. I worked at the University of Minnesota, hockey and football for about 5 years, and a lot of our staff have kind of an athletic background. I think the one thing that our physicians are phenomenal with is that philanthropic approach, is giving back to the communities that, quite honestly, have given so much to TCO and our physicians over the years. The goal is to create an environment that is welcoming to everybody in the community in regards to these athletes. To really the first thing I would say for anything is, and we talk about making these athletes bigger, faster, stronger, but quite honestly, the key is for injury prevention for us. Obviously, we're part of a large orthopedic group, So if we can reduce the level of injuries, that's obviously going to be impactful for the community. Kind of the goofy thing is in doing the training for those injury prevention, you also are getting faster, stronger, change of direction, forward, and reverse. So there's certainly a benefit through the whole process. I think the hard part for us is if we go out and start advertising for injury prevention, the sign-ups are low, so that's when you say, yeah, we're going to have small groups or speed and agility or whatnot, and our goal is to invite the entire community of athletes into the training house, but quite honestly, we're looking for so much more in regards to partnerships with the youth associations here in the community. I'm meeting with your athletic director from the high school this week to kind of talk with them about how we can get into the high school and further service the athletes there, to kind of give you an idea of kind of what we're looking at. Again, we're going to be in collaboration with E-Train. We're going to have at minimum one, ideally two full-time coaches pretty quick. And I think, talking with Bill, and we're looking forward to the partnership with the city. And when I say partnership, obviously we're going to be paying rent, but there's also a rev share model with the city. So the more the city can help us to grow and promote our services, the better off the contract looks for the city. We actually, again, we have a number of different providers above and beyond performance coaches. Our goal long-term is to offer access to a sports dietitian and even a weight loss dietitian. We right now have 5 dietitians within TCO. So if and when the need arises, our goal is to provide that as an opportunity. Long-term, our goal is to kind of grow this to the point where it would make sense to also provide physical therapy. And that leads us into the community center and the potential of kind of repurposing a space within the community center that again would allow access to athletes, but not just athletes, to everybody within the community. While also, I think, and Jay and I have had some good conversations about how we can continue to grow revenue for the community center based on what we're doing in the physical therapy space. In addition to that, we have an individual that, and I don't know if anybody has or have had kids here, but when somebody gets hurt, and unfortunately my daughter's torn 2 ACLs, my son is just coming off of an ACL himself, the biggest concern as a parent is like, who do we go to, what do we do, how do we get this kid taken care of? We actually have a clinical care coordinator that works with all of our young athletes to kind of steer them in the right direction, figure out where they live and the closest clinic and the right physician, because I can't stress enough, it's super important that these individuals are getting to the right person right from the start. And then also we offer free high school physicals, and that's something that we'll continue to offer to the community as well. So again, for us, it's so much more than the sports performance piece of it. And yeah, that's going to be a large driver to what we're going to provide here with you guys, but it's going to be more of a community partnership long-term is really kind of our goal. And quite honestly, we're starting with your sports performance there at the rink. Ideally, it'll move into a PT space, but again, depending on how supportive the community is and how busy things get, that may end up turning into something even more long-term.
So a couple things that I want to add to this is this was discussed with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board last week. And the parents, several of them are parents, and they have kids in other sports. Mr. Ratke, who's a representative, said that he looked into this. He's been a supporter and a customer of E-Train since E-Train opened. And he's very happy with the proposals that came forward. But he also reached out to a lot of other community members to talk about this proposal and how it would expand the scope of services. And from what he'd heard from our October meeting about concerns about what isn't there and what people would like to see, the phrase that he used is this clicks off 100% of what that punch list was. And so he thinks it would be really great, and the Parks and Rec Advisory Board voted unanimously to support this proposal and bringing it forward to you, because they think that it would better serve the broader community. E-Train has served the ice skating community, the hockey community very well, and this opens up that space to serve even more of the community and activate that space, because one of the things that's frustrated me is when you get that dip at the end of the hockey season and those lights are off upstairs. I like to see our spaces activated, because that means that we're serving the people that they were built for. And so this will do that.
Hey, could you go back to the TCO slide just real quick too, for those that aren't familiar with TCO or all that familiar? I think it's super important to kind of get an understanding of what Twin City Orthopedics is doing currently. again, within TCO and throughout the metro, there's 116 physicians, and that's going to continue to grow year over year as we continue to add new partners. And quite honestly, when I say partners, potentially other sites, but the physician recruitment is very heavy right now as well. In 39 locations, we've got 8 orthopedic urgent care clinics, which is they're open 8 to 8. So for these athletes that or anybody within the community that need access right away, that's open. We have 20 physical therapy locations, potentially here one would be an additional one, would make 21. 18 hand therapy locations. We have prosthetics and orthotics throughout the metro. Same thing with imaging. We have our own same-day surgery centers. A large number of employees. Obviously, it's been listed as one of the top workplaces on 80 plus years of orthopedic excellence. The one thing that I would say too, the partnerships that we have throughout the metro, we have probably right around 90 partners now. We have athletic trainers through TCO in 37 high schools. One of the things that we started early on out of the training house is we actually have performance coaches dedicated to high schools in 12 different high schools as well. Again, I think that the whole concept is we're trying to make the experience for these young athletes better. And to kind of give you a little bit of a background, I think a lot of the high schools that we've moved into, they were former coaches or a PE teacher or somebody else who was kind of doing it on the side and didn't really have the time or knowledge to kind of put into it. And we had a lot of classes that have come through the training house, a lot more pre-COVID. And a lot of the things that we hear from a lot of these younger athletes is it's a football-based coach and I'm a soccer player and I don't really have a lot of access to some of this stuff. And we're trying to fix that. I mean, obviously, I use my own kids as an example. My daughter was never in her high school weight room, never. And that's, quite honestly, I think it's not right. And that's something that we're looking to provide high-level access to performance for the athletes that choose to utilize it at a price that's affordable for most. And I think we've talked about this too. Like we certainly offer scholarships to families who can't afford it, but they've got an athlete that their coaches or the organizations feel like we need to help prop up. So yeah, I mean, we're super excited to enter the community, and certainly thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Questions, Councilor Whiting?
Thank you. Getting back to the physical therapy space, it looked, I think from the proposal, it talked about after 1 year it might expand. When we're talking about the partnership that you're proposing, the space that we're allocating for this, and then the future expansion of physical therapy space, would that be an expansion of the contract, the expansion of the space?
That would be a different
and then
contract altogether, sir.
A whole new discussion?
Yes,
Because it is a
altogether.
community center, I don't think we need to expand it into a medical center unless we have the space for it.
Yeah, and that's exactly true, but I'll remind you that when the community center was first proposed, there actually was some thought and discussion about having some kind of a health-based facility in the community center itself. But that is all future discussions with council. We just wanted to make sure that you were aware that that was a possibility. And if I can say something, as you can probably pick up, the word community has been used a lot. And that really means something to me in my position. It's not just a contract, it's a partnership. We talked very much about the fact that we wanted a partnership with the city. And I think, this particular partnership really hit it out of the park, and I'm delighted with the potential, service to the community overall. And frankly, as you know, I'm also a revenue guy, and it certainly offers some opportunity for increased revenue. It starts out at $2,000 a month, and that can go as high as to $8,000 a month, depending upon, obviously, how growth occurs.
And, to that point, if I may, how is that extra $8,000 recognized, and how it's not to exceed $8,000? We get the $2,000 per month and 5% of the gross revenues. How is that gross revenues communicated to the city?
So we actually already do this in several other areas. We do this with EdgeCheck, so they give us their gross revenue report, And in that example, we take 10% of gross revenues, and they cut us a check for that. In this case, it would be 5% of gross revenues, not to exceed. And the reason there is a not to exceed is because if it's that successful, we'll probably be having other discussions. That would be a great thing for us to be celebrating. So to talk the nitty-gritty of it, it's 6,100 square feet. They're proposing to put in over $75,000 in improvements to begin as of 1 April, which is at the end of this hockey season, which would mean that we would curtail the E-Train contract and start the training house contract as of 1 April. That would be the proposal. So they can start construction, because we got flash to bang. So the sooner we can get the just like we're trying to get materials, they're going to have to get new turf. It's going to be a different kind of space. It's very functional fitness. So there's a lot of equipment in there right now that's specialized towards hockey. And Mr. Rasmussen's been talking with all of those stakeholders to ensure that they've got buy-in in this discussion. So he's met with MPH, one of our AAA teams. He's met with, talked with the figure skating community. He's met with the Shakopee Youth Hockey Association, current stakeholders, and he's got meetings set aside to meet with other stakeholders, the athletic director, other associations, in order to make sure that as they design the space, it meets the needs. But 6,100 square feet, it's got its own entrance. So there's some branding pieces to that. So they want to build on what's already a strong brand in the Twin Cities. So Training House would have probably right above the door as you enter into what would be their space. It's a separate entrance from our main ice arena entrance. That would be where their branding space would be. And then they come up into their space. And then they've got some experts who would be talking about some of the other things. They've specified some of they want to get logos. And if you saw, it's a classy space that they put together.
And honestly, I would welcome anyone to the Training House in Egan at any point in time, for sure.
Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, a couple questions. So I'm just trying to understand this completely. Will this cause any of our offerings to families for kids' sports to go up?
It should not.
It shouldn't.
In fact, I think at the last meeting, somebody had said there was starters here in town, and they talked about the cost of what starters was charging the athletes, and we're half of that.
So the starters that used to be in by the church, they left, and one of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members shared what that cost was. I can't remember what it is now, but it was actually more than twice of what Training House currently charges.
And then the second question is, if a resident of Shakopee walked into your facility, your space at the community center, and wanted to talk about the use of their hands or whatever, and just seek your services, would they be able to do that independent of being a part of any sports organization in town?
Rephrase that for me. When you say the president of Shakopee, like when you say
A resident of Shakopee.
Oh, I'm sorry, a resident of Shakopee.
Say a resident walks in and says, you know, I've had some problems with my hands in the past, I want to come up and work with you guys.
You know, I would say that space that's going to be in the arena, it would kind of depend on that resident, right? I would say we're not going to be geared towards the non-active individual, let's say, because the hard part that it's kind of a delicate balance that we've got to have with the community center as well. The community center has their personal trainers in there, and we certainly don't want to compete with the personal trainers. I think, again, the long-term vision, when you start talking physical therapy in that space, if that were to work out, that would be open. Like if somebody comes in and says, I'm having problems with my hands, like the personal trainers in the performance space, their background is in speed and strength and sports performance. It's not I'm not going to be able to kind of look at your hands and say you've got carpal tunnel or whatnot and be able to treat that. That's going to be more towards, I think, that second stage which would be physical therapy.
Okay, so let me, Mayor, where is your revenue from a community generated?
From large like youth organizations or high school teams, individual athletes that would be coming into kind of doing their own thing. I would say those are probably the top three.
So if a high school team sought your services, wouldn't that high school team then put that cost onto those playing at the high school level,
Yeah.
and that would increase their price to participate.
Potentially, it might be a replacement of cost. So for example, with the Youth Hockey Association, they're already paying for it, it's just with E-Train. But now they're gonna get a different kind of reach than what Mr. Scott can offer, because you're gonna get the whole training house, the dietitians, and the other experts that are part of the training house team that weren't part of Mr. Scott's team before. So the costs aren't really gonna change as they transfer, but you're gonna gain all of this capacity that was unrealized before.
Okay, and does it apply to any other sports besides hockey?
Yes.
That's the goal, is we're gonna be open to.
So for example, soccer, what we learned is the soccer had contracts with that organization that was out by the church. It closed down. So they're going to be looking for somewhere to go. And what we learned is that the services available at Training House are half of what they were paying. So there's a high possibility that their costs might go down.
Counselor Contreras.
Thank you, Mayor. So it was a question at the beginning, but you've been answering it throughout. So I was going to say, will you be reaching out to all the other sports associations?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, and that's where I would lean on to you guys too, to say like, who are the main contacts? Because I would love to reach out and talk with them. And we may find that, you know, the sports performance piece doesn't necessarily work, but we may find that there's other avenues that we can support through TCO, whether it's, you know, athletic training coverage at tournaments. I'm going to preface that with athletic trainers are like really hard to come by right now. So I'm not going to certainly make any promises today, but I know that in a lot of the other partnerships that we have, that's what those partnerships are looking like. And we got a large partnership with a really large soccer group, and we provide athletic training coverage as part of that partnership for free to the association for like the large tournaments. And I know Shakopee, I think you guys have some pretty large lacrosse tournaments as well. My son growing up has played out here in lacrosse tournaments, and the medical coverage for those, it can get to be quite expensive, and that's something that, again, as we start talking partnerships, it's so much more than just sports performance, it's the medical coverage and kind of everything that kind of goes with that. Again, I can't make any promises today because of the shortage of medical personnel that are covering these events, but that's the kind of vision that I've got. And yeah, certainly, I would say one of our biggest groups that we work with right now is girls soccer. And to be quite honest with, in girls lacrosse, because those sports are chewing up knees right now at rates that we're trying to figure out a way to slow down.
Counselor Brown.
Free physicals are really going to drive down the cost for a lot of families too. To be able to, every athlete being able to go get a free physical is.
You talk a lot about the age of your clients would be high school age, or do you have a minimum age of clients that you would?
I would say we kind of massage that, I think, every year, trying to kind of figure, because we get parents that are like, my kid's the next whoever. It's a 7-year-old next Wayne Gretzky, right? And we're like, pump the brakes, send them to the park and tell them to go have fun, right? You guys want to skate, and that's fine, but there's only so much, and we can certainly do, and Eric and I have had this conversation too, I mean, if it's the right athlete, we can start to do some footwork, speed work, body weight type stuff, but we're not going to start loading these kids too young. I would say, the female athletes can probably start to kind of experience that a little bit earlier than the males, and it's kind of say in that 10 to 12 age range is when we would start. In Egan, it ranges from, call it 8 or, we probably have, honestly, we've got an 8-year-old ACL in with us right now. It's not common at all, thank goodness. But I would say we're ranging from the PT side, you can get as low as maybe 6 or 8 years old, all the way up until, we've got a couple of individuals that are still very active, individuals that just had a total knee that are with us, because it's different experience.
So your staff and your coaches are all qualified to work with kids in their own physiology and the uniqueness of where they're at.
Yeah, and our performance coaches, the coaches, so part of the thing that we've had conversations about, to hire the right coaches, it's not inexpensive. Because we're looking for coaches that have a background in exercise science or, kinesiology, so they have an understanding of the body and the growing athlete, if you will. What we're not going to do is hire a former football player that got a degree in whatever and say, well, we're going to teach you how to show these kids how to lift weights. That's not the people that we're hiring, and that's not somebody that we would hire to put into this facility either. hiring professionals that have an understanding of that athlete at the certain ages that, through that development and really how to train them appropriately.
More?
I had
Yeah.
one more. I had heard you talk about possible scholarships that are available, which is great, and that was one of the questions I had, because we try to work with people across all demographics of the community, so it's good to hear that that's something that's available for people.
Yeah, and just kind of give you an idea, so our PT at the training house, if you come to us for therapy, we actually have kind of this transition program back to performance, where it's a cash-based program, and quite honestly, all of our therapists know, like, money isn't going to be an issue of whether or not they're going to get into that program, right? It's important that, we feel it's important enough that we'll scholarship the kids that we need to scholarship in that program, and long-term, that would be the same vision that we would have here. Returning these kids back from injury, like, I'm not going to make $150 be the deal breaker for whether or not they get back to a sport that they desire, so.
Right.
Counselor Contreras?
Thank you. She beat me to my question, so thank you for that. But just a quick comment and a hint, our wrestling team holds the state championship for the last 3 years, I believe, or more. And we're this close with our football. So whatever we need, if you'd help us there. We make it to state, but we don't quite bring it home.
There's a reason that we're talking to you guys.
Right.
The community's growing very quickly.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to be part of that growth.
Okay.
And I'm meeting with your AD on Friday, and then we're hoping to kind of get over that hump as well.
Okay.
Again, my vision is to have a performance coach that's at the high school, and the one that's at probably a couple that's in the arena, and continue to kind of just grow with the community.
Awesome.
So today, maybe you won't see Twin City Orthopedics or Training House on some of these jerseys, or the practice T-shirts, but within 2 or 3 years, my hope is that you're like, nah, TCO's everywhere.
Well, I think, when I think of, our e-training has served our community very well over the years, but now, more hockey-based, right, singular. Now to attract TCO, Twin City Orthopedics, is like, to me, in the sports medicine world, it's like the Cadillac. Coming to Shakopee, you guys are innovators, best in class. To come and now take e-training and blow it up, right, I think is a phenomenal partnership and opportunity for our community. I followed TCO's history over the years. Sports medicine is what they do. Really, to have a partnership in the athletic aspect at the community center, but really what you need is to have a clinic down here in Shakopee, because we have a pretty big market for it. So that would be great.
Never, for sure. I mean, that's something that's been actually, talked about with our leadership, and just trying to kind of figure out
Right.
where this whole thing goes and grows.
And obviously, we're going to hear in a little bit, vote on this proposal, but, and I will say that we want the expansion of e-training with the partnership with TCO to be hugely successful.
I appreciate it.
And I like this agreement, it's 3 years. However, you have a cap on the gross revenues, and if you're successful, we want Shakopee to be successful. If Shakopee's successful, you're gonna be successful. So, why limit ourselves is kind of my point on that. But
So there's 2 things. If without a cap, that creates that basically creates you as a business, like true business partner. And that's something that TCO hasn't done in the past. And the cap that we put on of $8,000, to be honest with you, is a high cap.
Right.
That's gonna, quite honestly, if we even come close to getting that kind of revenue out of this
Right.
space, because again, it's 6,000 square feet, I think it's important for you guys to understand that there's only,
Limited
what we're
space.
trying to do is be conscious to what we're charging your community members.
Right.
So the revenue, if we come even close to that, we're all gonna be happy.
Right.
So,
Well, very good.
And that was actually part of our discussions when we were talking about the contract, and I was very upfront and said, well, we've never done a cap before. And the more we discussed it, the realization is that we could, work under that concept of the cap, and then, obviously, if this is successful, we have more things on the horizon maybe, so.
I probably overthink things, but if nobody gets hurt, that's a good thing. but that also hurts you.
Trust me, we get plenty of
Yep.
injuries.
Well, they're trying to
It's something
train,
that we're not,
if you have a sports injury, you might go to TCO to get corrected and
Rehabbed, I get it.
physical theater, but this training aspect is to make you smarter, better, stronger, more agility, so that you won't maybe get injured, right?
Right.
And that's part of the preventive aspect?
absolutely. And
Right.
That's the
And
whole
I
thing.
get that.
Where injury prevention is, that's what, if a performance coach tells you anything but the number one thing I should be doing is injury prevention, find a different coach.
How much responsibility do you folks have for the Vikings not making it into the playoffs?
Counselor Whiting.
Jeez.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend that the mayor and city council approve the proposal, to direct the staff to move forward to finalize details of the lease agreement.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion by voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, E-Training. TCO, welcome to our community.
Welcome.
Mayor and council members, thank you very much, guys. Have a great night.
All right. Thank you very much. And let's move back now to 8A2, which is the Scott County presentation on Resource Center and the library. And Mr. Reynolds, are you going to intro or to go right to Jake?
We'll just have Jake introduce his team, and then we'll have obviously a question time afterward, and if there's some questions, we can go into that. And again, apologize to Scott County, my non-attentive to detail.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you. I'm Jake Grusing, the Scott County Library Director, and I have my colleague Suzanne Arntzen.
Good evening.
And Nikki Hallberg here is with the county as well. So I'm going to run through a couple slides on the library, and then I'll hand it over to Suzanne to talk about the Family Resource Center. I made a note here. I wanted to just address a couple points in Mr. Reynolds' write-up for this item. And I'll take responsibility. He got the information from me, so there are errors that I passed on to him that showed up in print. The first one is in the recommendation, where it says if library services continue to diminish. And I want to be open that because of the COVID pandemic, we have reduced hours at all the Scott County Library locations. That's not just a Shakopee thing. That's every one of our 7 locations. But we haven't reduced or eliminated any services that we're providing. We're back in 2021 to having a full suite of library services. Second piece of information there in the discussion, it says the Resource Center nonprofit in parentheses. It is a county service at this time, so that was some miscommunication on my part with Administrator Reynolds, that is a county service that's operating within the library. And lastly, the space that I had reached out to Administrator Reynolds to talk about, not used due to changing habits of readers. I would maybe finesse that to say underutilized. There are people who use it. There aren't that many people who use the periodical section anymore, but we do have folks who come into that space in the library on a regular basis. So before moving on, I just wanted to address those few points. So Scott County Library, our vision is a community where everyone experiences hope, belonging, and possibility. And our mission is to create environments where all residents can connect with resources, support, and opportunities. I will say neither one of those statements is new for us. I've been Scott, I got a positive review from our county administrator, so I've been the county library director for 8 years now, starting my 9th year. And this has been our mission and vision the whole time. And I think if we had Mayor Williams from Savage here, who was the library director in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I think she would find some language there that would resonate with her tenure as the library director, that libraries historically and presently are about connecting people with something, with information. Previously, a lot of that was information that was found in books, but even in Mayor Williams's time as library director, they expanded to vinyl records, then cassette tapes, then CDs, VHS tapes, then DVDs, and now vinyl's coming back, not in Scott County, but St. Paul Public Library, my local library there in St. Paul, they have LPs on the shelves again, and they apparently fly off the shelves. But it's not only those physical materials. There are folks in all of our communities, but I would say Shakopee especially, who come to the library because they either can't afford access to the internet or a personal computer, or they choose not to put their resources in that direction. And I know the staff in our local branch here would say they see the same folks coming in day after day after day, reserving a time to use a computer or reserving a study room so they can access the Wi-Fi. Making those resources available so people can improve their lives as they see fit. There are 4 objectives for the Scott County Library System. First 3 are externally focused, and the 4th is more internally focused. You can read them there on your screen. I'll say the 3 external objectives, and this is really what I think libraries are all about, is we gather the kindling. We gather as many good resources, books, DVDs, Wi-Fi, technology, community partners into our spaces as we can. And for that to be useful, a resident, a patron, has to come in with that spark and actually turn that into something productive. And in Shakopee, 2021, we had 100,000 people walk through the door, even with some reduced hours, with some mask requirements previously. We had 100,000 folks in Shakopee walk through our doors and check out 150,000 items. We're proud of that. So I'm going to just give a couple examples from each of those objectives quickly, and then we'll move into the Family Resource Center portion of this. So Developing Young Minds, the library provides a summer reading program. Nearly 3,000 students, youth, attended in-person programs in our libraries in 2021. We distributed over 6,600 to-go packets, so those were packets that were printed out, put in envelopes. You could have them mailed to you, or you could walk into the library and pick one up, and then you have activities for your kids at home over the summer. We also extended that into the fall and into the winter, so folks can keep their kids busy and learning. More than 1,400 kids receive books and snacks at Readmobile visits, and I hope that as you have driven around Shakopee and seen the Readmobile, it has frequent stops out at Bonavista Terrace, but we do have other locations in Shakopee, and I would love to hear from any of you if you have suggested locations where that vehicle can come connect families with early literacy resources. And there's a picture of the beautiful Readmobile. Thank you to the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux for making a very generous donation to make that possible. Transforming library operations and promoting access for all. This is a picture of a Scott County library card. I know you're all familiar, you have those, you use them all the time, but if you haven't seen it lately, the Scott County library card, and we're at the Jordan Library here. There's an entry panel there. You may have read about this in your Scott County scene, where you can scan your library card if you've opted in for this service and you're 16 or older. You can scan your library card at the door when the library is closed and locked up from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Enter your PIN number. The door unlocks, and you can come in and do what you need to do. So we've been doing that since September. Folks come in just to read the newspaper. They come in to use a computer or to use the Wi-Fi. If they're commuters, they come in to pick up their requested materials before they leave for the day. So far, so good with that pilot project. And again, that's trying to think a little bit differently about the library model historically. Libraries have been all about we provide a service and you need to come to us when it works for us. It's not really about the people in the community. We're trying to flip that a little bit so that folks can have access when it works for them, not necessarily for the library or the resources we have for staff. And that last objective, building strong communities, stronger communities, creating opportunities that connect individuals to each other, their community, and the world. We had, pre-pandemic, 700 or 800 meeting room reservations a year in the Shakopee Library alone. that served over 5,000 residents. So 5,000 residents came in to those 700 community meetings that folks have. So just that space that you provide and the county administers is a great service to the residents in your community. One of the things we use that space for now, several hours a week, is the Resource Center, the Family Resource Center, the Shakopee location of that. So there are 3 locations. When Suzanne and her team reached out to me in 2020 with this opportunity, I was pretty excited about it because it's, again, a little non-traditional thinking. It's not, we're going to take mandated services that are provided at the government center and just provide them in a more comfortable location. It's trying to catch these folks who are coming into the library. The reason they wanted to be in the library, and Suzanne will speak to this in a little bit, is because of the foot traffic that's there. There are people there who have resource needs. Library staff can attest to that. People asking, where do I get support for food? Where do I get support for shelter in a lot of cases? Where do I get support for mental health? Different needs that I may have. Our library staff do the best they can to connect them to resources that are available not just through the county, but through the whole community. But when this opportunity came up to have community partners in the meeting room space on a regular basis, a scheduled basis, so we could direct those customers to that time, it felt like something that was worth trying. And it fits what the county believes library service is all about, and it's that connecting individuals with resources and opportunities. So before I hand it over to Suzanne, I'll pause if you have any questions for me or if you'd like to hear about the Family Resource Centers first.
You said for Shakopee, we had about 100,000 visitors?
Correct.
Just in Shakopee, and they might not be unique visits, but in total?
Correct. Roughly 100,000 visits in total. Those may be the same person coming in twice in one day or multiple times in the week. Yeah, it's not unique visitors.
Okay, and then Jake, you brought up the side room gets used a lot. I mean, I've been in there, that gets used a lot. How many, were you counting the hours when you gave us stat there?
No, I was counting the number of reservations. So our software tracks the number of times that room is reserved. So we average 600 or 700 reservations a year pre-COVID.
Yeah, right.
During COVID, everything's changed, but it was 600 or 700 reservations a year. I may have the actual figure.
With no time commitment, right? It's
no, so
just a reservation.
If you need it for half an hour, you can reserve for half an hour. If you need it all day and the room's available, you can have it all day.
I was there on Saturday in that room. Okay. Other questions, Councilor Brennan?
Yep, I agree. Thank you for your presentation. I think a library is a place to get information, and it's a resource. I mean, you can read a book about 50 Shades of Grey, or you can read a book about the history of World War II, or you can use the other services that are available. And I think the librarian, that job is to answer questions of the community. And I think that I know that the legal services has been at the library for a long time. I know that people rent out the community, the conference rooms that are different organizations. Scouts use it, the homeowners associations use it, and a different variety of people use it. So I don't think that this is very different from anything that is currently available. And I think that it's just a different vehicle of sharing information. So I know where you're going. I know where you're going to. So I don't think this is anything outside of that.
Okay.
My question.
Councilor Lehman.
My question, Mayor, is did I hear you say that people are allowed to enter this building after hours with a card and a PIN number?
Not here yet.
Not the
Not here.
Shakopee Library, the
Okay.
Jordan Library.
Okay.
I will say, Councilmember Lehman, that residents in Shakopee can access that meeting room because of how the library was built.
Right.
We can lock the library proper, as you might think of it. We can give them a key card and they can come in and use the meeting room after hours. There was somebody there this evening after the library
Right.
closed.
Okay.
Okay, I'll hand it over to Suzanne.
All right, good evening.
Good evening and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to share information about our partnership with the library, with our Family Resource Center. I am Suzanne Arnson. I'm the Children's Services Manager with Scott County. And again, really excited, I think, to talk. This is a new program, really program model or service delivery model. So to give you some backdrop about Family Resource Centers, they are really designed, there's sites really across the nation designed to be one-stop shops or universal access points to get families services, supports, and help them build really community in a way that meets their needs when they need it. What we heard, well, I'll save that for later on. So it's this idea of a safe, welcoming place, helps to normalize help-seeking behavior. Oftentimes, families don't want to walk through the door of a government center or a law enforcement center for support. So how do we create welcoming spaces where there's a variety of resources and supports for families? The unique pieces with Family Resource Centers is that they can really be tailored to the unique needs of families and to communities. And so over time, what we will see in Scott County is that we will have a parent advisory team, and they will really begin to accept ownership and oversight of how programs get delivered out of Family Resource Centers. So if in Shakopee parents say, we really need service X, then we will look at how do we support them in assuring that that service is available, because that's what the community is identifying as the need. So we really see the Family Resource Centers being sort of that vehicle for communities to come together to support children and families at the earliest point possible. So why did Scott County do it? So this really originated from a conversation back in 2018, where Children's Services and Scott County Public Health hosted 2 community conversations, one here in Shakopee, one in Jordan. And it was really around what did community members see as strong or supportive of families and children, and what did residents or professionals see as gaps in the community for families. From that, what we heard pretty loud and clear from families especially is this idea of how hard it is if you are parenting young children to get from one organization to the next to get their needs met. And especially if you're coupled that with economic barriers, lack of transportation. From those community conversations, we developed a strategic plan really focused on how to implement strategies tied to feedback from the community. That really launched in 2019, our Together We Can movement. And that is, again, it is organized through Scott County, but it is really a community-driven movement where we've got residents from across the county who are part of steering committees, steering subcommittees, targeting what are interventions and supports to families that can end child maltreatment within a generation. We know if we can end trauma, or at the very least minimize trauma, the trajectory for kids and their families will be substantially better. We reduce out-of-home placement, you reduce criminal behavior, you improve academic success, ultimately leading to becoming self-sufficient within a community. So through Together We Can, based on the feedback from community conversations, they researched what are strategies, what are interventions that we can do that help get at this idea of organizing services in a one location rather than these multiple sites. And that really launched or gave birth to this idea of Family Resource Centers. I want to tell a story, though, about the Shakopee Community Center conversation. We had the conversation, we got lots of really good feedback, but what struck me following that conversation is I had 4 young moms, 2 of which were Hispanic, 2 of which were Caucasian, coming together pretty emotionally to talk about the stressors coupled with parenting, and certainly talking about how they saw they wanted to do something different within their family and within their parenting, and wanted a community or a forum to come together to learn and to talk about different parenting strategies. And so again, I see Family Resource Centers helping to, again, fit that need of providing education and resources and providing education opportunities to build community. The other piece with the Family Resource Centers is ideally we are looking at how do we reduce strain to other organizations. We know that law enforcement, as an example, is a key partner, can often get called to families related to sort of social service type calls or requests. We know schools are burdened with that. We are hoping that Family Resource Centers, as we can scale them up, become a resource for law enforcement to essentially refer a family to the Family Resource Center, thereby freeing up their response. So why the library? Why the partnership with the library? Certainly, as Jake says, they are pillars of the community. They are welcoming, they are safe, and we know for Family Resource Centers, we want to normalize help seeking. We want to make that welcoming to all. And so that partnership of embedding Family Resource Center to provide education and resources within a library made sense. I'm not going to talk for the sake of time about the Gainesville, Florida example, but certainly would encourage, if you haven't yet, to take a look at the YouTube. I think it does a nice job sort of encapsulating the partnership between the county and the library. I won't read this, but in terms of the mission and vision, this was developed in really partnership with about the 25 partners that are connected to the Family Resource Center. And it really is designed about enhancing family supports through collaboration and partnership for the purposes of helping kids and families thrive and really building stronger community. This is a list of sort of services and supports that you might find at the Shakopee site. We would have family parenting skills, health and wellness supports, legal supports, housing navigation. The part I'm certainly most excited about is, as we know and we've heard, the changing demographics within Scott County and within Shakopee. We have on site at all sites cultural liaisons for our East African and Somali community, as well as our Latinx community members. This is just a pictorial sort of depiction of our partnerships. The dark blue boxes are our site partners. The light blue are our cultural navigation partners. And the orange boxes right now represent the community partners that are working with us. The list continues to grow. This is currently our operational hours. Mondays in Shakopee, Wednesdays in Jordan, and Thursdays in Prior Lake. Really, we have themes of each week of the month based on protective factors that are research-based to really look at reducing risk of child abuse and neglect. So I thought it might be interesting to pull out some Shakopee-specific data. So from August, when we launched, through December, 89 families have accessed services and supports. 77 of those have been here in Shakopee. The remainder have been at the Prior Lake site. I won't go through all of the demographics, but certainly we are seeing a diverse population. I was struck with about a third of the families who are entering speak an English as a second, or English as a second language. And so really I think it demonstrates how do we build supports for families that meet their cultural needs moving forward. And then this is just, again, a picture of our schedule as an example for January, where we have services built in. Every Monday, as the example, we have mental health supports, economic supports, housing navigation, and other programming. We've recently just launched some virtual parenting, both in English and Spanish. This is our contact information. With that, I would certainly open it up. Again, we see this as sort of a first stage of evolution. We really see this as a partnership. Scott County sort of holds it now, and it is really about a collaboration of a number of entities coming together to really support families.
Suzanne, thank you very much for your presentation, and questions of the Scott County Library System? I found your information very helpful. Is there any other reason you're not trying to partner with other libraries in Scott County?
Yeah, we really are piloting 3 different sites to get a sense of like foot traffic, and so it's just more of an experiment of sort of where do we see the best alignment and best partnership.
Would it be accurate to say that the Shakopee location is the busiest?
Correct.
Of the 3? So that's part of what prompted the conversation, why we're here, why I reached out to Bill initially. The Shakopee location is open 4 hours a week. It's the busiest one where we're piloting, as Suzanne mentioned, the model in different locations and libraries seem to be a good option for this model. I think there's interest on the county side of expanding the hours at the Shakopee location beyond 4 hours a week if it's working. That's great, but those 4 hours, getting back to what I was talking about earlier, that works if you can get to the library on Monday from 3 to 7. If you can't, it doesn't work so well for you. So how can we expand those hours? And we had conversation about the meeting room, but to that information I shared about that is the public's meeting room. So this is used 4 hours a week there, and they followed the same booking process that everybody else in the community does. If the county expands the Family Resource Center at the library in the meeting room, then that
Impacts.
where do those 700 people go who reserve that space throughout the year? Then they need to go somewhere where potentially they have to pay. The library, you don't have to pay to use the meeting room at the library. So that's what prompted the conversation about, are there some other spaces within this building, your building, that we could offer this service?
Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, I'm going to try to take a whole different perspective on this. And I'm going to stay away from all the various services that the county offers, because that's really not my area of responsibility. That's the county's. Now you're adding on to your government center, and yet you don't have the space in that addition for this type of plan. At what point, I mean, everything that's happening at the Shakopee Library building is a county function, 100%, other than the meeting room. At what point does, you know, and the Shakopee taxpayers, honestly, we're paying the heating bill, the electric bill, the insurance bill, HVAC, roof, windows, parking lot.
Paid to build it.
Paid to build it. You know, we put money aside for future upkeep on the building. And we're basically paying, you know, thousands of dollars a month so the county can provide services in our building. At what point do we say maybe the county should buy this building and your future is whatever you want to make it in that building? I mean, it's got the location known throughout the county, and it's not a Shakopee library, it's a Scott County library. It's open to anybody in the county. I mean, it just seems to me that our costs just keep going up, and we in effect, the Scott County the Shakopee taxpayers are subsidizing the county's role as seen from the state for a lot of their services. It's not about the services. And I don't think that is what the original intention was when we built the building. I was here when we built the library. I was on this body. We built the new building on the location. You know, and you know, nobody can foresee 20, 30, 50 years later on what changes society is going to make and what the needs might be. But it seems like that's what you're trying to do, not necessarily a bad thing. My whole point is that at what point does Shakopee not be subsidizing the county's operations, because the county gets their money from federal, state to do these functions, and they get a lot of other outside dollars for some of these functions. We don't have these outside dollars to keep propping up a building for somebody else's use. So just something that I think we need to have a conversation about.
Well,
Could,
Jake?
yeah, thank you, Councilmember Lehman. I think there were I heard a couple questions in there. Can I try to respond to
Sure,
them?
by all
Okay.
means.
So in terms of when do we decide the county should entertain the notion of buying the building, I would say that is a decision that this body would make, right?
Well, and it was meant for me to
Yep.
say that to this
Yep,
body also.
to your body.
Absolutely.
And that's the model with all 7 of our public library locations. Not every library in the state operates that way. Most of them don't. That if the city provides library service, like in Rochester, Minnesota, City provides, they run the library, it's a city department. They own the building, the county isn't involved in it, it's their service. There's not that partnership, which in theory, it maybe is a good idea that both parties have some skin in the game, that the cities own and maintain the buildings, so they have to be involved in some way. The county provides the service in those buildings, so we need to have some kind of a relationship there. I think I get the concept behind that model. Probably create some benefits and maybe create some liabilities. One of the first things you said, Councilmember Lehman, in that question was that we have the new government center and we don't have space there, so now we're housing some services, something to that effect.
I didn't say you don't, I said, do you have space
So-
at the government center for the services that you're providing? A lot of the services that you're providing at the library are also available at the courthouse. And I understand what you're trying to do to make it more accessible from 3 to 7, but the courthouse is open until 4:30, so you're really only gaining an hour and a half on one day. And you could do that at the courthouse if you wanted to.
You could.
But you're saying people are afraid to go to the government center for services, and it's a more inviting atmosphere at the library. That's what you said. So what you're saying is that you want to make a more inviting environment for people to go to a different location to get the government county services that they should be getting at the courthouse. So does that mean that your courthouse is not inviting?
I'm not persuaded that that's what I'm saying. If that's
Okay.
how I'm coming across, that's not how I'm trying to come across.
Okay.
One, I don't think the county would say, we don't have space at the government center, or we think people don't find our new building inviting, so we're going to try to provide services elsewhere. I really don't think it's a space issue. I think part of it is the library is a location where there is foot traffic, where we are catching people who walk in on Monday, maybe they don't know the Family Resource Center is available, or they walked in on Tuesday and they talked to library staff, and library staff said, we have this option on Monday. If you come back Monday night, you can come into the meeting room and talk to these folks, and maybe you don't have to end up in mandated services, deeper end services that really do cost the taxpayers a lot more money, that are at the courthouse. So I mean, maybe Suzanne could speak to it. I don't think the county sees it as we're taking courthouse services and we're just providing them in a different place and hoping that the city will pay for it. I think I understand how it might look like that, but we're trying to articulate that it's different services. It's not just county services. There are community partners coming together to work with the residents who are showing up on Mondays from 3 to 7. There was one more thing I had hoped to address there. Oh, there's just the cost, that we're asking the city to, in effect, subsidize these services. I think it'd be an interesting exercise to try to quantify the increased costs at the Shakopee Library right now. It's in the meeting room. The meeting room, if not used by the Family Resource Center, is used by other groups. And if there are increased costs for the city, I think the county would be open to seeing that and trying to understand how much more the city is paying to operate the library right now just because this Family Resource Center is using that meeting room 4 hours a week.
Well, the library itself is a county service that we've
Right, that gets back to your broader question of
Correct.
at what point do we talk about that?
And we know the cost just on natural gas itself has gone up substantially, so.
So, Counselor Whiting?
My point is that, I think library services have evolved over time, changed, but the point is, the focus here with the Family Resource Center seems to me is that they want to meet the people where they are in a family-friendly environment and provide services to our community members. They may come in and visit, send the kids off to go look for a book, something like that, if the times work when the library's open. I just see that this is a value to our community, and we just got to go into it with an open mind that community in our library services are changing.
That's good. Counselor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. I just was looking at it in so many different ways. I was part of the Together We Can committee way at the beginning when you guys started that. I didn't continue going for many reasons, just personal reasons. I got my own kids, so it's, trying not to neglect my own to go help others. So that was my thing. But I'm looking at it in all different ways. We are innovative, the city is, in so many different ways, and we're really proud to be innovative, right? And I understand the point that we're trying, that's the city we're trying to make of things, the cost and everything that's happening. But these programs are pretty darn good. And I think what I'm seeing is that these are, I'm going to use the word preventative, right? We're trying to prevent our community members to have to step into that courthouse. And where can we do it is in a safe place that they feel comfortable. Not that the courthouse isn't welcoming, but it is a little intimidating, to be honest, because we know all the services that are there. And you walk in, I walk in and I'm like, oh my God, where am I going, right? It's like, it's a huge building and you're like, you see so much stuff and you're like, with the kids, do I go in? Do I leave them? So it's like, I get it. At the library, it's more kid-friendly, I can say that. So yeah, I've gone from a book, when Justin Bieber was there, I didn't want my kid to actually have it, but we rented it out for a week, and I'm like, you can listen to it and go put it back. different things, right? To a federal tax form. So many different things. I've used it. Our internet was down, and I needed it, and I ran in there. I'm like, everything. So I get it. To me, we're trying to prevent these families, not that we don't want them to go into the courthouse, but prevent them to having to go through that struggle. I'll call it a struggle, because it is when you have kids. I don't know, I see what we're trying to do, but I would like, as understanding entities, to work together to try to make this work, because we, as a city, I love how we're always talking about, oh, we're so innovative, we're doing this, oh my God, we're so doing this and that. How come we can't work with our families that need it the most to prevent them to end up needing extra services or having to hit that courthouse or that building for bigger reasons? That's my thing. So I don't know. I'm just looking at it at a different level. But yet again, as a mom, I'm like, okay, so I own the house, I pay for all the bills, but yet my sons bring other boys who eat everything. I'm like, okay, I get it, because I understand where we're going, right? As the owners, we're like, okay, but we're racking up bills, we're doing this. How can we both work together? So we can do it, but everybody has to be open about it and find a meeting ground. So, yeah.
Okay.
I should have mentioned this at the outset. Administrator Reynolds couldn't have been more clear with me throughout this process, to Councilmember Lehman's point, that it's not, I don't think anybody's really arguing about the quality of the services.
Right.
Or whether we should be providing services like that or not. The question is more about that, at what point does the county step beyond the language in that agreement from 1977? What constitutes a library? Does the county provide that service? Does the county buy the building? Does the county pay rent? It is that different conversation. So I just wanted to acknowledge that was made clear at the very beginning, that it was not about the services, it was about that agreement between the two and who's taxing who and who's paying for it ultimately.
Appreciate that. Yep. Councilor Brennan.
Well, I don't exactly know what Mr. Reynolds wants to do, but I know that providing information to people in our community builds a stronger community.
Right.
And that is a core of who we are, and I would support providing information, as much of information as possible to our community members. And I'm not really sure what the purpose of seeing this is tonight. I think that you're following what a library is by having this organization, the Family Resources Center, provide that information on Monday from 3 o'clock to 7.
Mr. Reynolds?
Well, I think the bigger question is not what's currently happening, it's what the county envisions might happen in the future. And we don't have any disagreement at all on what's currently happening. The key is the county is looking at the second floor and looking at making it a full-time family resource center at some point. And
Dedicated space.
as dedicated space. And so my concern was that the council hadn't had the opportunity to provide input. Ultimately, you know, we all have our roles, and the city is not a human services provider. That's not what we do. And my concern, as I put in the memo, is that where a county's going to be in 20 years, or excuse me, where a library is going to be in 10 or 20 years down the road. And ultimately, what is the tipping point where this essentially just becomes a county office building as opposed to a library? And ultimately, whatever this body decides is what it decides. But I think it's important that you have the opportunity to discuss it. And then if and when the county comes forward, you know what they're talking about and kind of where we're going. So,
Councilor Brennan?
I know where the location is of the periodicals, and I know how that space is being used, and it's not used very much. And we do have other conference rooms and small meeting rooms that people meet in. And people do use those conference rooms that are organizations. They do set up a time to meet. And I don't see this being any different. And it sounds like when that space in the current periodical section is open, and maybe you can clarify for me, is that space will be open for other people to use?
That's something that I don't feel has been determined at this point, because we haven't moved that far along in the process. What we have talked about is closing that off so that with glass and doors so that it is a private space. But in theory, if the Family Resource Center weren't using that space, and it depends on how it's designed, that could be I think it's the most beautiful space in the library, and it is the least used. That could be used as a conference room, but it depends on what the configuration is if we get to that point.
So I could see like a conference area for a meeting and a small storage area that possibly for supplies and materials and that type of thing.
All of that, I think, would be things that we would be discussing, the county and the city together, if we get to that point in the conversation.
I think that in the library, that those two conference rooms are really booked up and it's difficult to get space. So if that's an option that's available, to have that open to the greater community at times that it's not available or made for the Family Resource Center, that it would be really beneficial.
Councilor Lehman?
Mayor, being that it's our building, don't we get to control the meeting room space use? Which is actually on the other side of the library. It's open.
well, we never have. I mean, it's been kind of determined that way before I was here that would be a library space to do with as they wished, so.
So I think one thing we might be missing here is, as we're discussing this, there's a whole lot of concern about losing some service. Recognize that every service that happens in that library building is not our service, it's the county's service.
Right.
And if they don't want to do that service today, with no conversation, they don't have to. That's their decision. We don't have no say in that whatsoever, not today, not yesterday, and not tomorrow. So, well, at least from the library perspective, but if it would be easier for everybody involved if they had their own space and they can determine what they wanted to do. We're talking about putting walls up and cordoning off spaces, and now you're physically changing our building. So I tend to agree with Mr. Reynolds that where this is going in the future, this is not, I don't know why we would own a building that we have 0% use in. It does make sense to me. I mean, we don't even store nothing there. This is a total county operation.
It's an interesting dynamic that we built a building and then turned it over for a county service. I don't think I've ever seen that anywhere before.
Well, there was an original old library that was the county library.
Right.
County library, but the city owned before that building.
Yeah.
So it was carried over, and that was before my time, too.
You know, I mean, because it does present this dynamic, unfortunately, where, you know, we're essentially a landlord and responsible for the building physically, and somebody else then, actually, it's even different than a landlord-tenant, because we don't have the ability to direct a lot of the stuff that happens there.
Well, we don't get any payment either from our renters.
Yes, correct, yeah.
And we pay for all the expenses.
And we pay for all the expenses. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, and so we have been taxing our residents for years for this, and
Well, and if I read the bill list, our heating cost on these buildings is thousands of dollars.
oh, it's a significant expense, and also understand that we also have, you know, all the capital
Yeah.
projects that
Yeah.
come up, whether it needs a new roof, air conditioning, or anything else.
Yeah,
I mean,
parking lot gets repaved. And
Carpet.
Good gig for the county.
Yeah, and we are gaining zero. And when I say that, I don't mean residents aren't using your services. I'm looking at it from a standpoint that the city has no city services here. County has all county services here. It would almost be like me going out to the county's public works building tomorrow with a car in my toolbox saying I'm taking over this hoist for the week. Step out of the way. By the way, turn the lights on and bring me lunch.
Well, this is a very interesting conversation, you know, and I appreciate it. I've been looking at it for a couple months. You know, when I was growing up, I used libraries to learn, went to do research, education. The library is where they had the documents that I didn't have at home, right? You know, there was, I picked this quote out of the Star and Tribune on an article involving libraries and stuff a couple months ago. And it's interesting because I think libraries are changing. What are they changing to, and what are they going to become in the future? We probably don't know. Maybe this is kind of what it is. Library systems are changing. They are far more than just places to check out books or spend time on a snowy afternoon. Successful libraries have become living, breathing reflections of their community, in close touch with the changing needs of the residents. Public libraries offer common spaces for community meetings, homework, assistant, online language classes, computer access, job searches. Many of these are tailored to the needs of a specific community that require intimate knowledge of these communities to do the best possible job. Kind of a generic thing. But I'm thinking about where libraries were kind of the pillar of the communities years ago, right? And common. And then I'm thinking about where they come. I went to the library the other day. I was in the conference room at a meeting. I took time to go tour your library. You certainly have this all over as well. I think this is a great starting point for the discussion, but then you dig deeper and we build a building and we pay for it and the county uses the services, and then that's a weird setup, right? I didn't get that in the beginning. And then I look at the resource center and maybe they're providing a great social service for our Scott County, but are you gonna pay rent? What would what would prevent another organization from saying, hey, we wanna carve out a spot? Because actually there was an organization about 5 years ago that came, talked to me, and they used to rent the room or reserve the room, but they wanted a dedicated spot. How about that spot up in the library, over in the corner? I could you know, I could have a phone and a copy machine and a computer for their organization. You know, if you start down that path. But you're right, the library is really run by the county. And they've evolved, and they provide, you know, your numbers are pretty, 100,000 people. I asked a question a couple months ago, are libraries still being used as they used to be? And they said, oh yeah, absolutely. I found that interesting. In one of your slides, you talked about your objectives, and I think it was for the library. And you said you wanted to increase efficiency and effectiveness. I appreciate that because you're a deliverer of services. But then I sit back and go, I really, because I want to be efficient, I want to be effective. But then I go, how does that relate to Shakopee's being efficient and effective? And then, because we're the cost bearer of it, right? So if we were to move forward, I'd like to see some sort of, you know, cost aspect to it. And in the big picture, you know, we wanted to buy the CAP agency for redevelopment over on the Canterbury area. And that opening, it was already for sale. You guys CAP was moving down on First Avenue. Southwest was moving out to Dean's Lake. It all worked out, right? And everybody's in a better world, and we're gonna have a phenomenal development on the site over there. But then maybe this is what we should be doing here, right? I mean, $3.5 million for the CAP agency, just send that check back, you have your building. But I think this is an interesting starting point. I know you've discussed it internally a lot. I think we would have to have more discussion on it. That's how I feel.
Since we have a library people here, two things I remember from years ago in the library. No talking in the library. And what were some drawers that you'd pull out, look up the name of the book?
Card catalog.
And it would give you the aisle location.
The Dewey Decimal System, that was a card catalog. A lot of people store wine in there now. Not in the library. But those have become kind of hot collector's items on eBay, those old, because they're usually made.
I was gonna go to the library tomorrow and look for it, look for the wine.
And we do let you talk now.
All right.
I mean, I think for both of us, on behalf of the county staff, the library staff working in that building, thank you for the conversation. That feels like a good place to leave it for me at the end of this presentation. I know we went over, but an openness to future discussions about what does this look like and how do we make it work. I really appreciate the consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Jake, Suzanne, thank you very much for the presentation and really the open dialogue. I value that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's move ahead then, and up next would be 8B2, Parks and Recreation 2021 Annual Report, and Jay will present. Welcome.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. And this information was in your packet. I just wanted to highlight a few things and answer any questions that you might have had. First and foremost, I wanted to say thank you again. Earlier this year, we were able to convert 2 part-time positions to full-time positions, and with the volatility that we've had in hiring part-time, those were really critical decisions that have ensured that we've been able to maintain services. So they're both highlighted in blue. One of those was a recreation coordinator position that went from part-time to full-time, and you'll see that particular individual's impact on our youth programming this past year has been phenomenal. And his efforts have really made a positive impact on what we're able to do in the department. The other one that's around there is at the ice arena, converting a part-time position to full-time position. We haven't been able to hire part-time coordinators. and getting the necessary hours to ensure that we're not killing ourselves and killing our staff with overtime. And I've talked to lots of other ice arena managers around the state. This isn't a unique problem to Shakopee. They're having a hard time getting Zamboni drivers. And so being able to convert that position to a full-time position has ensured that we're able to provide the necessary support and not overwork, exhaust the staff that we had. On the far right-hand side of that slide, you'll see that our part-time staff needs, we continue to have these problems. I mentioned the ice arena folks that we can't hire. Guest services are critical. We have about half the staff that we need for guest services. The impact of that is we've had to close the lower entrance, and in one occasion we've had to adjust hours because we just don't have the staff to maintain it. And so if you know of anybody that wants to
Those
come
are
work.
part-time?
Those are all part-time positions.
What constitutes part-time, how many hours?
29 hours or less.
29,
Maxing at 29 hours. The reality is many of the folks that are interested in working for us part-time, they're only available on evenings and weekends. And it's our daytime hours that we have a very difficult time trying to fill. And then a couple other critical fills in our aquatics program. Lifeguards are very hard for us to hire, and we haven't seen a lot of interest in our swim instructors, our WSIs. We're at critical mass in terms of being able to deliver that service because we've got a demand, and we don't have enough instructors to deliver it because even the lifeguards that we have aren't interested in taking on that additional responsibility because there's a lot of risk, and candidly, our customer base isn't always, it's challenging for a young person to have to deal with some of the challenges that we have to deal with in this space because decorum isn't always the way that our customers are behaving.
Right.
But we expect our staff to always present a high level of professionalism, and that exhausts some of our young people.
Right.
And then programming staff and the fitness staff, we've got shortages there, but we're getting along. So staff-wise, again, I just wanted to say thank you for the conversion of those two positions. That's been critical for us to be able to survive. In terms of numbers, one of the things, I had a presupposition that because I didn't see revenues moving in the direction that I wanted to see them, that our membership numbers were down. And so I did a deep dive with staff, and what I actually learned was our membership categories have changed. And so we're not getting as much revenue for some of our monthlies, but we've really seen an uptick as well in some of our active older adult programs. And those are insurance programs. They come, they get benefits from their insurance companies for coming so many times. Those programs, we don't generate as much revenue, but with the closure of the YMCA that happened south of us, we saw a huge uptick in terms of those members moving to our facility. So it's great. We have a lot more members, but we aren't seeing that huge uptick in revenue that I would hope.
But, it's still interesting, though, the annual packages are down, but the monthlies are up, a couple times. The silver sneakers are up four times. I just found the data pretty good in looking at overall membership packages rising by about 500, and especially, that's a 5-year look, but still holding its own even during this COVID 2-year period plus, so.
One of the reasons that I think we've seen memberships move to monthlies, Mr. Mayor, is because with the unpredictability that's been happening under COVID, a lot of our customers want to have an exit strategy. Right. And so committing to a long-term annual membership when they don't know what's going to happen next month seems a lot more risky than I have a monthly that I could cancel at the end of this month if the facility closes. So that's what I would attribute that huge shift to monthlies being. I also wanted to point out the daily admissions. We do really well with daily admissions. We've seen pickleball numbers were absolutely on a huge curve going up. They took a downtick due to COVID. They're moving back up again. In fact, it was just announced we're adding more pickleball hours because the demand is there. And it's all ages. It's really fun to see all of the folks wanting to learn that sport. Pickup basketball remains pretty good. And the Lookout Playground, we saw a dip there because we weren't allowed to open it. It was closed a significant portion of the last 2 years by direction of the Minnesota Department of Health. And so we've had to manage that space, make sure that we were getting it clean so that we aren't being a conduit of COVID. And we're seeing those numbers come back. People really enjoy that space, especially in these cold months. So as a result, you see our total visits. We're not where we were in 2019, but considering the context, I think we are doing very well in terms of serving the community. So then as we look at the ice arena revenues, which has been a topic of discussion since I got here, that was one of the things that I was directed when you hired me, and I think we've moved in a very positive direction. I would attribute that to the key partnerships, and the new partnership with Training House that we have will help continue to move in that direction. The partnerships I want to highlight, a AAA team, if you remember, one of the things I talked about was vacant space. We want to activate it, and now we have a AAA team that is using the ice arena in the early morning times. The structure that we had for what was happening for the figure skating program before, we were giving away a lot of ice. And so now we found a way that's mutually beneficial that also gets Shakopee's name out there. So with 12 state champions this year in figure skating that were on the platform with the Shakopee name on their back, and one that went to nationals this year, the first representative from Shakopee, or from Minnesota in a decade, that has two intended consequences. One, our revenues are up, we're activating the space, but most importantly, the people that are coming are incredibly happy. You remember in this space we had a few residents that were very upset about that transition. Yeah. What you may not be aware of is at least 3 of those people that were unhappy are now in the Shakopee Skate School, and their kids are doing fantastic. And so they have converted, they become supporters of that program. That's one of our partners. EdgeTech Hockey has been a great partner. They not only provide great things to the figure skating community, but they're also providing apparel to a whole bunch of other sports. And so it's serving the community really well, and it's convenient for them to get there. What isn't going as well, concessions. Actually, our vending machines, we've had an uptick in vending because concessions, they're just bad. Concessions this past year are about $1,500 in 2021, our 10% take on revenue. So that isn't where I'd like it to be, but that's kind of the nature of COVID. People are bringing their own stuff in, or they're not buying it all. And then birthday parties are back on the uprise. We average 11 to 13 birthday parties a weekend now that we're able to offer them again. We weren't able to offer them for a significant portion of time, and they're very popular.
I love this deep dive when, you know, I think this packet was sent out earlier too to look at before, and the deep dive and the breakdown, it actually overall, it really shows the strength of our community center.
I think we're accomplishing what it was intended to do. The last couple slides, I want to take a look at programs. It's important to note COVID hurt programs across the board because at the very least you had to limit the number of participants. So we were directed by Minnesota Department of Health only being able to have so many people in a group. That was a real challenge through a significant portion of 2021 until those restrictions were lifted. And even under those restrictions, our participant numbers are looking really good. One of the directions that we're hoping to move in 2022 is to offer more teen programs. Really the only teen program that we offer is a ski program. It's very active, the kids enjoy it. But historically, most teen programs are provided by community education or within the high school. And so what we recognize is the school district is doing a great job of providing for those that are involved in music, that are involved in athletics at the varsity and junior varsity level. The associations are providing great opportunities. There's a gap there in terms of recreational opportunities that we're going to try and open up the aperture on in 2022. Sand Venture, we had record numbers this year thanks to the heat. As well as I think coming off of a COVID year, people were ready to get out and about. That was-
2022, 90 days, 30 days of 90 or better. Thank you very much. Those are great numbers.
And then our rental hours, we're doing good, and we're continuing to look at different ways to get better. Weddings were down a little bit. We already have a whole bunch of weddings booked for this year, and in fact, we have weddings booked into 2023 already. Concert and movies this year, because of our sponsorship donation program, actually the concert series and the movie series were both provided by donations and sponsors. Thanks to those who helped with that. And you had Carla come and talk with you about our different volunteer adopt-a program and donations previously, so I won't expound on that. So that's what I have for you this evening. I just wanted to give you an opportunity if you had any other feedback from me as we move into 2022, things that you maybe want to redirect me to focus on.
Questions of staff, Counselor Lehman?
Well, it's always revenue and expenses, but I would say that one of the things I've been thinking about is how, and not just in recreation, but how is the inflation that we're seeing, and it looks like it's going to be around a while, and it looks like it's probably going to continue to rise. You know, we're seeing inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years, and if it's going to continue to rise, I got a feeling that's going to have a big impact on a lot of different things. Not only the disposable income for recreation, or at some point it's probably going to hit the job market. So I don't know how we incorporate that, but it seems like if it isn't the COVID attacking things, it's going to be the inflation. So things out of our control, really.
Well, I think there's a big appetite for people to get out and be active, and COVID, maybe they pivoted from a community center to using a trail or something like that, but they're gonna, I think that people are gonna still be active and choose carefully, maybe more carefully, more selectively, but I don't think it's gonna be crossed off the list. I mean, I think in a family budget, there's some other things, especially for our youth. I think as a parent, you want your youth to be involved in a program, because if they're not in a program, they're gonna find some other things to do that might not be as productive, but.
It's just, it's outstripping wage increases, and that's never good, so.
If I can comment to that for a second, Council. The staff, I think, does a very good job of conscientiously finding creative solutions to keep things accessible and make sure that what we're doing. So an example was, we have a putt-putt golf event coming up, and as of today, that whole event is, the expenses of it are covered by sponsors. So creative solutions in order to address cost goes up, and so we have to find ways to make sure that we're covering that cost. The first solution, I don't want it to be that we're passing it off to the people that we're trying to get to come. And so in this way, we're able to promote local businesses. Each of them are sponsoring one of the holes, and we're able to keep the costs down so that people can access the services that we're trying to provide. But unfortunately, if at some point we're not able to do that, the cost of services are going to have to go up. Or we're going to have to reduce the amount of services that we can offer.
Great report. Other comments? Councilor Brennan?
On the organizational chart, are the ice rink attendants on this organizational chart, or are they on a different?
They are on the organizational chart. They are on the far left-hand side. Ice arena supervisor is on during days. Okay. And then we have two arena specialists, one that primarily focuses on the evenings, and then the other person that flexes. Okay. And then we have a handful of part-timers that help out. We don't have enough part-timers because we've gone out 7 times and haven't been able to hire someone yet.
Yeah, I had noticed we have a calendar on the website that shows the ice rinks, and those ice rinks that have open.
Oh, are you talking about for the outdoor rinks? Okay, no, they are not on this chart.
Okay.
So those are part-timers. We currently have 5. They actually fall underneath the programming side of things, so they'd be on the green side, okay. And they would fall underneath programming staff under the part-timers in the far right-hand corner.
Okay,
We needed 10, we were able to hire 5.
okay.
All right, good. Other, great report. Really appreciate it, Jay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Where are we at here? Moving ahead. 8C1, flexible dumpster ordinance. Michael, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this ordinance deals with what many of you may know as items called bagsters. They're sold at most of the big box stores and some hardware stores. You buy them for $30. You then can put your trash in them. A lot of people don't realize that now you have to spend $100+ to get them picked up, depending where you are in the zone. We have found that most dumpsters don't stick around very long. These have a tendency to stick around for a very long time. And our building inspection staff has found some that are frozen in the snow. They're out by the road. They're covered by snow. They're full of items that are not considered construction waste, which is what these really were designed for. They're filled with household waste and other things, and the carriers won't pick them up, and so they just sit. And so this was an attempt. This is modeled off another city's ordinance, basically define what these are and to limit them to 14 days.
Questions? Comment? I guess Councilor Whiting?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I've had complaints about this, and I've seen it. I guess, to me, it's a good ordinance. I guess we could debate the 14 days, if that's a long enough time period for someone to take care of this or not, but otherwise, I have no issues with this. And it explains all the details, all the definitions, and what's expected. So I think whatever ordinance we stole this from, it seems like they thought it through, so.
We looked at the ordinance and we saw if it fit within the Shakopee parameters and made the adjustments as necessary.
Fine craftsmanship from the city attorney.
So I guess 14 days? Oh, sorry, yes.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just so it's clear, I don't think Mr. Christie's asking this to be adopted tonight, just wants to run it by you so we can send it out. And I think that's true with the other two coming up. We just want some feedback so we can,
Just
so there's
feedback.
not adoption tonight.
And also, essentially, what we would do would put these at that point on consent unless there was something that you guys wanted to discuss on it, so.
And you might get some feedback on that 14
Yeah.
days based on what Mr. Christie finds.
And Mayor and Council, one of the things we'll do is we'll contact as many as we can of the sellers of the bagsters. In other cities, they've put up placards that say, if you buy one of these, you need to know you can't leave it on the street for more than 14 days.
I have a question.
Councilor Lehman.
When you buy one of these and use it and set it out, who is it that you call to pick it up?
So in this territory, it's Waste Management.
They sell the bag to Home Depot, and then you buy it, and then you buy it for 30, and on there it says, when you're done full, call Waste Management.
Okay.
When they open it, put their stuff in it, and put it in their yard, they never make the phone call, and it sits there, and they just think someone else, or maybe our in-house garbage would pick it up, or someone will, and they just sit there. This problem is not unique to Shakopee,
And Mayor and Council, these are not considered highly durable. They're basically plastic, so.
We're out.
Councilor Brennan?
In research that I did, it sounds like there's a number of cities that the bags are being sold, but Waste Management isn't even picking up in that zip code area. So I think a placard, in this store would be really beneficial, or even if we knew that Waste Management is coming into Shakopee, to let those people know that, they don't come here.
That would be deceptive advertising on the seller of Waste Management if they're,
Oh, yeah, that's what they're doing, so.
oh, I didn't,
So at least from what I understand is you have to indicate what zip code you're in, and they might not even service that area, so. I don't know how that can get clarified in here. And on section C, I don't know what it is. Section C, it talks about where it can be placed or not placed, and it has to be behind a curb and A lot of them are going into the alleys that have no curbs, so I don't need to know if that needs to be clarified. That they have to stay out of the alley.
We'll make that.
Okay, Counselor Contreras?
Just for future information, when it does, get approved, who will be enforcing, or what will be the citation fine if it is out there more than 14 days?
Mayor and council will come back, speaking to both code enforcement and the building department. We'd like to do it administrative fines, so you get a warning basically if it's been out for longer than 14 days, or they'll see it and say you can only have it out. The property owner will get notified. If they don't do something, it would be administrative instead of having to go to court and have a ticket.
Yeah, and, obviously, the whole point of this is to get them motivated to clean it up. We're not looking for revenue out of this at all. Unfortunately, I think you almost have to have the fine be close to what the pickup fee is for people to get motivated to do it. So we'll take a look at that and bring that back as well.
Thank you.
Counselor Lehman?
Another question. So if that pickup provider doesn't service our area, can they call and pay an additional fee to have the contracted hauler that Shakopee has a contract with to pick it up?
I think
Mayor and council, unfortunately, these are designed for a crane that most haulers don't have, so it's a very specialized piece of equipment that picks these bags up. I looked, Waste Management does have pickup in Shakopee.
Okay.
They do have a facility here.
We do, okay.
And I think that people, you're right, it was kind of designed for construction material, but
Right.
I've certainly seen some that has garbage and furniture and,
Our ordinance says no swill
see
either.
that, this is an opportunity to comment, that we would see this back. Counselor Brennan, you okay?
Yep.
Counselor Lehman? Yeah? All right, proceed. Thank you. All right, let's move ahead then to 8C2, which is flavored tobacco and vaping ordinance. And look, Michael Kursky will present. Welcome back.
Mayor and council, this is modeled off some other cities. Prior Lake has done this. Bloomington and a number of other cities in the state. Those are the ones closest to us. But all of these code changes really are designed, if you get to the very end on the last page, it's to allow us to enforce G, which is flavored electronic delivery device. No person shall sell or offer for sale any electronic delivery device that contains a flavored product. So you can do tobacco and menthol, but that's it.
Counselor Lehman?
Isn't there flavored, isn't there flavors that are allowed under state law and certain flavors that are not?
So it's very complicated. So the federal law, some of you are familiar with the Juul product, I think it's ULL. That was a product that was self-contained. You put a cartridge in, you smoked it or vaped it, basically. They had many flavors. The FDA, under the last administration, basically said you could only have menthol or tobacco flavored. Everyone's gotten around that because now they basically make ones you can, are disposable or refillable that skirt the federal guidelines. And so while Juul sales have plummeted, there are lots of other companies out there making other products that get around the federal regulations.
So which ones are allowed by state law?
State law, you can pretty much do whatever you want, as long as you follow the federal law, which is tobacco flavored or menthol if it's in a refillable delivery mechanism, which is what a Juul is.
Well, I'd like to follow Minnesota state law, whatever that is.
So this is to basically not allow flavored tobacco or menthol. You could have flavored tobacco or menthol in an electronic delivery device, and that's it, not all the other flavors that you can buy.
Is that what state law says?
No, the state law does not regulate. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, see, I would prefer we follow state law, because we're making a law more restrictive than what state law would be.
Again, this is purely for your discussion and direction. We just brought it forward because Prior Lake's just gone through this. Bloomington actually is going to outlaw all tobacco sales, I think, in June or July. We wanted to at least not have more stores opening here, that we became the mecca for flavored vaping.
Counselor Whiting.
You know, unfortunately, these flavors seem to be, whether they're marketed or focused to kids or whether they're just attractive to kids, I'm not going to speculate. But the fact that they're flavored makes it a little more appeasing, and it's an addictive product. That's the attraction, and it's an addiction. And I'm the worst kind of non-smoker, a former smoker, so yeah, I see it as necessary in a gradual step. It is over state law, but as you see, several cities are moving in this direction, and it's keeping it out of the schools. And again, one of those distractions that kids get into. Yeah, they don't need it.
Counselor Brennan?
I don't know if we are aware of how the people are, I have to think about how I'm going to word this. I don't think we have done enough research to understand if the businesses in Shakopee are misusing the policy that currently exists. From what I understand, when we had the last exam of tobacco selling businesses, that this was not a group of businesses that were looked at. So I don't know if this is even an issue in Shakopee or not. I do agree that, you know, flavored anything is attractive to kids, but I don't know if that's being sold, and I hate to put more restrictions on businesses than what is necessary. You know, and at the same time, we're looking at, the Scale Partners, and Scale recently had a two-month presentation on marijuana, and, you know, that's being looked at as a positive and is potentially a positive for the state, but, you know, we're not allowing flavored vaping, so.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds?
Flavored vaping is being sold in Shakopee. It's being sold in all the vape shops. It's currently legal, so you wouldn't have any non-compliance because people can do it certainly today. You know, our purpose of bringing this here is that it is an issue that's being debated everywhere. It clearly will have an impact on us because we will see increased vape shops. I just wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to make your voices known one way or the other, and then whatever you decide is where we'll go from there.
City Clerk?
And unfortunately, I will have to say that at our recent tobacco compliance check, 7 of our tobacco license holders failed. So if that will help you with any of this future.
They were, okay, so.
So that means a minor went into the business and legally tried to purchase and was sold tobacco products. So this is just something to think about in this whole process.
Thank you for that. City Attorney?
Just to point out again, this one does have to go to, we have to send it to all the tobacco licensees and give them 30 days notice. So if you might get feedback from them that says this either is or isn't a problem, and you can certainly consider that when it comes back to you for adoption.
And that's both, Mayor and Council, that's both tobacco licensees and alcohol licensees, because both our liquor license holders and our tobacco license holders, they both sell, and we have both businesses that sell both liquor and tobacco. So we'll have more than just the tobacco licensees that have it, so.
I think our compliance check aspect, just to, you know, we have worked, the city council here in Shakopee over the last 20 years has worked on that to refine it, make it better, make it simpler, and a couple 3-step process. I believe it's generally been very effective in reducing those non-compliant, and now we see a spike here recently, which is odd. That is still not unique to Shakopee either. So I'm not sure if it, and I always feel it's always on the business owner. They always say, well, that employee no longer works there, and okay, well, great, you're the owner though, and you hold the licenses, so, take the steps, but, you know, we're looking for feedback on this. I'm a vapor, I use flavored, the product in there, so that would go away. I do know that this whole tobacco thing over the years, I mean, the state got $6 billion a bunch of years ago. That money, I think, is all gone. Trying to reduce this a public health thing. Minnesota actually led the way in smoke-free office works in public buildings. We're seeing it in parks now. We're actually trying to help our residents, and health-wise, and I think that's good.
Well, that's
Mr. Lehman?
respectable comment, but if we banned alcohol, we wouldn't have any DWIs either.
You were first, but.
Okay, if you banned alcohol, yeah, there wouldn't be any driving, and there's two different issues. DWI is driving. You can certainly have a beer and not drive.
Many things that are addictive, that are abused, and it's not possible for government to regulate people's personal choices. You can't legislate responsibility, even though.
Counselor, or Mr. Reynolds?
Well, ultimately, what we do want from this is that, do we spend any more time on this? Are we done? If we need to spend more time, if we need to change some language, we obviously, if we're moving forward, we have some notification stuff to do. But if not, I mean, so we kind of need to know what you want us to do at this point.
Let's just start down here. Counselor Contreras?
My idea, two things, addictive, you know, and to teenagers. And the second one is if we continue selling and our surrounding neighbors or like, you know, Prior Lake, they stop. So then, like you said, everybody will be coming here. So more incoming traffic, and I'm not saying that that's not bad. They might stop at a restaurant, whatever, we get it. But on the bad side, you know, I don't want that attention that, oh, Shakopee will have it. Let's go to Shakopee, Shakopee, Shakopee. That to me is not a reason I want my tourists or whoever are coming to come for. So.
Do you want to see this move forward?
Yes.
Okay. Counselor Whiting?
You know, I kicked it around back and forth, but, you know, in our ordinance here, it spells it out under the new section for line 1. It recognizes that, you know, you can't sell these products to people under the age of 21, but the industry knows that 90% of people smoke begin before they're 18. And then after the age of 25, chances are they won't start smoking. So they're focusing to try and get their products sold here by getting them started early. And I think that's known, and I think they know it, and the flavors just enhance that. So I would say let's move forward with this and start with starters.
Okay, move forward. Counselor Lehman, you want to see this move forward?
I want it consistent with Minnesota state law.
Counselor Brennan, you had some questions about more wide-ranging. Did you want to see this move forward?
I would like to see it move forward, but I still have a lot of questions, so I'm not to the point where I would vote on it.
All right, I'd like to see this move forward, but the next time we see it, I don't want to see it on, well, we can put it on consent, we can take it off.
We wouldn't do that for this.
Right, for a little more discussion. So I'd like to try to take those steps to move forward here and then tighten it up and see where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Is that enough direction?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, thank you.
Counselor
Would something like this have a public hearing so people could come and vent on this?
It wouldn't be required, but we certainly
We
can.
can certainly do that. That's what Prior Lake did.
And there should be no reason not to.
Right.
Moving ahead then to 8C3, which is ordinance to modify city-owned parking lots in the B3 downtown area. Again, this is just for review and offer input, and Michael Kursky will present.
Mayor and council, this came about because we had some building owners that wanted to allow their tenants to park overnight, and we found out actually currently under the current ordinance, it's not allowed even though everybody's doing it. The reverse of that is we also have people using the lots for other purposes. So we've had boats, trailers, motorhomes, cars stored, you name it, are stored in the parking lots, and there's really no way to enforce it. So working with the city attorney, we came up with some ways to kind of crank this down a little bit so it's a little bit easier to enforce. So that when, right now under the snow ordinance, we have had to tow some cars out of there. I'm sure some of them have been there a long time. This would at least for the residents allow us to keep track of who the cars belong to, why are they there.
Okay, great. Counselor Whiting.
I didn't realize we didn't have a 24-hour lot. I always thought I've heard people talk
So
about
did
the
we.
24-hour lot, and I thought, okay, it's a 24-hour lot down there. I never parked there that long and didn't think about it. But we have people living down there that don't have parking.
Right.
So we got to have a 24-hour lot.
Right.
So this is great. If you give them a tag, we know who's there, and we can get rid of these people that just park their junk there. So works for me.
We will, Mayor and council will have some outreach. Jen Burrington's going to talk to the property owners downtown and to the residents down there.
Counselor Lehman.
Mr. Mars, Mayor, it's kind of like a wine, takes time, I guess. I proposed this back under Mark McNeil's days.
Wow.
Good memory.
Actually, I found those in the minutes. And it was actually, whoever was before him, you proposed it.
I did, and then I proposed it again when first year of Administrator Reynolds is.
That I did not find, but
changed
it's
my
been
tune now.
proposed many, many, many times.
And it kept getting shot down because of the ability to manage who has it, who's got the permit, and administrative side of it. So at least we're gonna recoup that cost to do that. And it probably wouldn't hurt to have the renters in the B3 landlords make sure that information is accurate.
Yep.
And then the other concern I had with this is, you know, if we word this too loosely, you talk about boats and stuff being parked there, but we have a municipal lot at Thole and O'Dowd's, and that's where boats are supposed to be parked because they're loading and unloading out on the lake. So I don't want to get us in a technical mess here. But B3.
That lot is not in the B3 that you're discussing.
Right.
Yeah.
So is there any other B3 areas?
So Mayor and council, the B3 lots would be the lot right across from Wampak's, that's number one. There's Pablo's parking lot. There's the lot that's behind the Laurent building, which is a city lot. There's the Lewis Street parking lot.
Okay.
Those are all in the B3 zone.
And it wouldn't be the.
No, I think that just to, I think that I'm a big fan of this too, because I drive by at least the Lewis Street parking lot a lot. And I look at all times of the day, and I leave at 6:30 in the morning when I'm going to work or come home, or on a day off during the day. And it has some cars there that are there all the time, and I'm going, well, aren't they going to work? And I know maybe they have a different schedule, and I get that, but then you bring up a boat. Well, if I'm a boater and I rent from downtown, and I'm out at Dow Lake fishing with my boat, and then I come home and I'm just gonna park in that parking lot.
Right.
That's gonna take up the car spot, the boat spot, and then I got a motorcycle, and then I got
Slippery slope.
public parking, but we're not a
storage lot.
not a storage, and so I kind of go, if we loosely do it, and then if we do it too tight, I even thought about, well, now it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I've been at one of our local establishments, well, no, I can't drive. And then I got to park in that parking lot, I don't have a sticker.
I think to be fair, we're not targeting that, and we're not gonna be out there at 3 AM seeing if there's a car parked there. This is for those clearly long-term
Flagrant violators.
flagrant violators. that-
Well, I know that on the east side of the Lewis Street parking lot, up against that old building up there, I mean, that's kind of the storage roll along there, right?
Well, and it also is being used by one of those business owners to actually conduct business, so.
Being annexed.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yep.
We need to make sure that the permit, I don't know if it's gonna be a permit that sticks in a window or what, but the permit has to have a number on it, and that number needs to be able to match it to the vehicle.
Yep.
So we have, through our permitting system, people will be able to do it all online, put in their vehicle information, their tag number and everything, and
To
it'll
the vehicle with
correspond
a
to
phone
that.
number, right? Because if the police are there and want to look up,
Well, you don't wanna be able to take the sticker and put it on a different vehicle and
No,
find out that
right.
this sticker belongs to a
Yeah,
correct.
14 Malibu and it's on something else. you know?
Adhesive one, I
Yep.
think.
yeah, I think Counselor Brennan, are you in favor of this?
Yep, that's fine.
Counselor Contreras?
I actually am.
I think we have built enough consensus. Bring this back and bring it forward. And I like this style of solution, and, you know, 3 times is a charm.
Good things
But
take
let's,
time.
but communication is the key on something like this, so we don't get burned, yeah.
We would do an extensive outreach before this ever went forward. And probably should hold a public hearing on it as well, that way we can get some public input.
All right. Thank you very much.
One of the other benefits to this is we're recognizing that the people that live in the buildings downtown do need a place to park.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Great. 9A, the city bill list is before us. Questions, comment? Seeing none, we would move to a liaison report. I'm going to start down here. Counselor Contreras?
I don't have one.
Fine. Counselor Whiting?
Nothing to report. MVTA is tomorrow. I was able to attend the Shakopee Heritage Society annual meeting this weekend, and they talked about the cultural corridor, so I got some good information there. So that's all I have.
Counselor Lehman?
169 Corridor Coalition, they canceled their meeting for January, and then the scale meeting was an overview of legislative priorities with our what do I want to call them? Our group of representatives for Scott County.
Legislators.
Yeah, there's a name for that. What did they call them? Our whatever. All of the people that represent Scott County. So they went over all that. The one thing that I did catch out of that meeting that caught my attention toward the beginning was there was some discussion about the concern about the schools, mental health of the kids in school because of all this COVID and masking and isolation or whatever. And the new challenges moving forward are going to be the teachers. They can't seem to find teachers. There's really short-staffed on substitutes, and you know it's going to be a problem moving forward. So they're saying. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's not really a city or scale issue per se, but it was something that was discussed.
All right. Thank you. Counselor Brennan?
I had SPUC right before this meeting tonight, and the SPUC is working with the school board representative or the school to purchase property for a water treatment plant. Some more information will be coming back in a few months. The service territory agreement should be coming back to the SPU Commission to approve in February. The water, the tank 8, which is the new tank in the Windermere area, is in the process of being filled. There's like several steps. They have to, put the chlorine in and then fill a little bit more and wait and stuff. So it'll be about a week before that's totally filled. The West End substation, we accepted the plan and the bid for the West End substation, and the delivery date for that will be January 31st, 23. That's all I got.
Counselor Brennan, thank you. Exciting that tank's getting filled.
Takes a week to fill her.
Then it's all downhill from there, right?
That's right. Shower pressure is going up.
That's bad.
It's too late for that.
For my mayor report, and speaking of Spuck and the city, what a great, we've had some positive press here in the last several months on a couple things in the Culture Corridor, and then a great follow-up article in the Star and Tribune over the weekend on the relationship and where we're at with Spuck and looking forward. I thought that was great. So we're getting a lot of positive press. I think that's good. I also attended Saturday the Shakopee Heritage Society annual meeting, and the presentation was by the Scott County Historical Society on the Cultural Corridor. Great discussion. You know, it's just everybody it's a positive thing for Shakopee. So I think more awareness, more information, I think that's good. Of course, a week ago or two, we had the Zamboni for the firefighters that was well received. We got some positive press for that. This Saturday, Z2 will be unveiled. The other Zamboni, the reveal will be Saturday at the ice rink at 11:45, right? So if you thought the firefighter thing was cool, wait till you see the next one.
Try not to blow a hole in the ice, right?
So, but that's my mayor report, and then now we would move and go on to the administration report, Chelsea. Oh. Mr. Mills.
I'll let my sub do it tonight.
Well deserved. Good news that we had tonight. The Shakopee Riverbank Stabilization Project made the governor's list. I was just reviewing the list. I just got a physical copy of it a few minutes ago, and I was looking at it, and it's interesting to see what else made that list. A community center, and these are from what I would say are communities much like Shakopee. Community center.
We didn't think of that.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going. A fire department overhaul, and several other things that I look at, and we've never ever stepped up to the plate and said, hey, we need help here. And as I constantly say, as they're taking $9 million of fiscal disparities money, we get no local government aid, and when we want something, when we need something, it's nice to know that we're being heard, and we got money for the pedestrian bridge, and now we've made the governor's list, and so clearly not done yet, and still have a lot of lobbying to do on my part, among others, and so anyway, just wanted to share that news, and we'll see where we go.
That's great.
Mayor, before I forget, on the scale meeting, the city engineer, Mr. Littlehag, did a presentation on that riverbank stabilization to the group of legislators representing Scott County. You did a nice presentation.
Yeah.
So it's his fault that it got on the governor.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think our ask has been out there for a year or two, and last year or the year before, both, watching the video of the conference committee talk about the different asks in front of communities, and you only get, a little shot, a minute to talk about your idea, but the same thing, community centers, bad roofs, where the deferred maintenance was never done by a community.
City Hall rehab is one of those as well.
Right. No offense, but Veterans Memorial gets a lot of looks, and that's great too, but then I look at Shakopee and I go, if we lost that line down along the river, and it poured into the river, and the cost and expense, and the impact, and, I go, we're protecting infrastructure, and we're helping the Minnesota River improve their quality. It just checks so many boxes, and I've seen those discussions, so it's interesting to see, again, the same type of things being asked for in the governor's bill for that, but I think hopefully this is year three is a charmer. So, all right. Thank you all. Jeff, is it? No? All right. Number 10, other business. Is there any other business before this council? Okay, that's great. Counselor Brennan.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 at 7 o'clock p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion. In the next few days, please stay warm, be safe. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We are adjourned at 10:15.